Welcome back to Sleepy Stories, where the quiet of the night meets the whispers of the human heart. Tonight, settle in as we unravel a tale that begins in the shadows of betrayal, woven through the soft glow of candlelight and the steady hum of a life once thought secure. This is the story of Madison, a woman whose world fractures in a single, shattering moment, only to be rebuilt into something far greater than she ever imagined. Picture yourself in the last pew of St. Michael's Church, the air thick with the scent of lilies and wax, as a familiar melody plays, a melody that once held promise, now laced with irony. It's a journey that starts with a text message, a light glowing on a phone screen, and ends with a revolution born from art. So, close your eyes, let the day slip away, and join us as we step into a story of heartbreak, resilience, and the quiet power of transformation.
If you enjoy this story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means the world to me and keeps me inspired to bring you even more heartfelt tales.
I sat in the last pew of St. Michael's Church, hands trembling as I read the text message one more time. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. The irony of watching my husband of 8 years walk down the aisle toward my best friend while his working late excuse still lit up my phone screen is something I'll never forget. My name is Madison, and this is the story of how I turned the most humiliating moment of my life into my greatest triumph. The day had started like any other Tuesday at the Morton Contemporary Art Gallery, where I'd worked as lead curator for the past 5 years. The morning light streamed through the glass ceiling, casting prisms across Jackson Pollock's latest acquisition, a piece I'd spent 6 months convincing the board to purchase. I was arranging the final details of our new exhibition, Perspectives in Pain, ironic considering what was about to unfold. My phone buzzed for the 3rd time that morning with James's familiar excuse, 8 years of marriage, and lately it seemed like he was working late more often than he was home. I tucked the phone away, focusing instead on adjusting the lighting for a particularly striking sculpture. The gallery had become my sanctuary over the past few months, as home grew increasingly empty and quiet. The first sign something was wrong came during the morning staff meeting. Sarah, my best friend since college and the gallery's marketing director, hadn't shown up, unusual for someone who prided herself on perfect attendance. Her assistant mentioned something vague about a personal day, but the way she avoided my eyes made my stomach twist. By lunchtime, the whispers had become impossible to ignore. The usual buzz of the gallery felt different, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Conversations stopped abruptly when I entered the break room, replaced with awkward smiles and hastily averted gazes. I caught fragments of hushed discussions. Today at 4. Can't believe they would. Poor Madison. I was adjusting a frame for the 5th time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking for some reason, when Tom from accounting appeared in the doorway. Tom, who'd always been direct to a fault, now stood shifting his weight from foot to foot, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. Madison, he started, then stopped, his face a mixture of pity and discomfort that made my skin crawl. I think you need to see this. The world has a funny way of shifting, doesn't it? One moment you're worried about whether a painting is hanging exactly level, and the next, you're staring at a wedding announcement on social media that shatters your entire reality. The post was elegant, simple, topped with an engagement photo. I'd never seen Sarah, my best friend of 15 years, wrapped in James's arms, my husband's arms, both beaming at the camera. Join us for the intimate ceremony of Sarah Mitchell and James Cooper, today at 4 p.m., St. Michael's Church. It was 3:15 p.m. The gallery's security footage would later show me standing perfectly still for exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I know this because Oliver, our head of security, showed me the tape weeks later, both of us marveling at how someone's world could implode so quietly. Madison? Tom's voice seemed to come from very far away. Do you want me to Call someone? I looked down at my phone, still clutched in my hand. 3 unread messages from James. Working late tonight, don't wait up. Might pull an all-nighter with this project. Love you. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep. Inside me, slightly hysterical. The last message had come just 30 minutes ago, while he was presumably getting ready to marry my best friend. The gallery's walls suddenly felt too close, the art I'd spent years curating now just a blur of colors and shapes. Sarah's office. Door was closed, her nameplate catching the afternoon light. How many meetings had we had in there? Planning exhibitions, sharing lunches, trading stories about our lives. How many times had she listened to me worry about James's increasing distance, offering comfort while knowing exactly why he wasn't coming home? The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 4. I should have been falling apart, screaming, crying. Anything but this strange, calm clarity that had settled over me. Instead, I found myself walking to my office, picking up my purse, and checking my reflection in the window. I looked the same as I had this morning, when I'd thought my biggest challenge would be finishing the exhibition layout. I'm taking the rest of the day off, I told my assistant, my voice steady. Cancel my afternoon appointments. The drive to St. Michael's Church took exactly 17 minutes. I know because I counted every second, gripping the steering wheel as the familiar streets of downtown Atlanta rolled past. How many times had I driven this route to attend services with James? How many times had Sarah sat in my passenger seat, sharing gossip and dreams? The church parking lot was half full when I arrived. I recognized most of the cars. Friends, colleagues, people who must have known, must have been watching this unfold while I remained blissfully ignorant. My phone buzzed again as I sat there. Definitely pulling an all-nighter. Don't worry about dinner. It was 3:55 p.m., and I had a decision to make. The weight of my wedding ring felt suddenly suffocating on my finger. 8 years of memories, promises and shared dreams, all built on a foundation of lies. I slipped the ring off, holding it up to the sunlight streaming through my car window. It caught the light just like it had the day James placed it on my finger, promising forever. I stepped out of my car, the late autumn air crisp against my face. The church doors stood open, welcoming guests to witness a ceremony that would destroy one life and celebrate the beginning of another. My heels clicked against the pavement as I walked forward, each step marking the end of the life I thought I had, and the beginning of something I couldn't yet imagine. I was about to crash a wedding. My husband's wedding, to my best friend. And somehow this would become the moment that changed everything. The heavy wooden doors of St. Michael's closed behind me with a soft thud that echoed through my chest. Inside, the church smelled of fresh lilies and betrayal. Flickering candles lined the aisle where I'd once walked as a bride, their warm light now casting accusatory shadows across the pews. A string quartet played softly from the corner, the same song James and I had chosen for our own wedding. I slipped into the last row just as the music changed. The handful of guests, our friends, I realized with a jolt, were all facing forward, unaware of my presence. From my position, I could see James standing at the altar, shifting nervously in his tailored suit. The same suit I'd helped him pick out 3 months ago for what he'd claimed was an important client meeting. My phone vibrated again in my purse. Without looking, I knew it would be another working late text. How many lies could one person tell before they started believing them themselves? I counted the flower arrangements instead of crying. 13 white and pink bouquets, Sarah's favorite colors. Of course they were. She'd carried the same combination as my maid of honor, 8 years ago. The church doors opened again, and a collective murmur rippled through the guests. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Sarah. I could tell by the way James's face transformed, his eyes lighting up with an expression I hadn't seen in years. My fingers dug into the wooden pew hard enough to leave marks as Sarah floated past me, radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than our joint savings account. Dearly beloved, the priest began, his voice carrying through the sacred space. The same priest who'd counseled James and me before our wedding, who'd baptized Sarah's nephew last spring while she and James apparently planned this moment. We are gathered here today. From my vantage point, I could see everything with perfect clarity. The way Sarah's hand trembled slightly as James took it. The proud smile on her mother's face. Aunt Linda, who'd hosted our family Christmas dinners for the past 8 years. The collective joy of a group of people celebrating love while simultaneously participating in its destruction. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Meeting running long. Might have to stay at the office tonight to finish this project. The timestamp read 4:15 p.m. I glanced up at James, standing at the altar, decidedly not in his office, decidedly not working late. He was smiling that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with in college, but it wasn't aimed at me anymore. It was directed at my best friend, the woman who'd helped plan our wedding, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd sworn to always be there for me. The priest's voice droned on, asking if anyone had cause to object to this union. The irony wasn't lost on me. In movies, this would be the moment where I'd stand up, make a scene, expose their lies to everyone present. I imagined the gasps, the drama, the satisfaction of watching their perfect moment crumble like my marriage had. Instead, I sat perfectly still, my curator's eye taking in every detail of this twisted exhibition. The way James's mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, the same woman who'd called me yesterday to ask about Sunday dinner. The familiar faces of our social circle, all dressed in their finest to witness this betrayal. Even James's best man, Mike, who'd texted me last week asking for advice about his wife's birthday present. As they exchanged vows, I found myself mentally cataloging the lies. Every late night at the office, every business trip, every time Sarah had canceled our plans last minute, every sympathetic nod when I'd confided my worries about my marriage. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a masterpiece of deception that I'd been too blind to see. I, James, take you, Sarah. My wedding ring burned a hole in my pocket. I remembered standing in this same church, making those same promises. Sarah had stood beside me then, holding my bouquet, smiling through tears she'd claimed were of joy. Now I wondered if they'd been something else entirely. You may now kiss the bride. The church erupted in applause as James and Sarah sealed their vows with a kiss. I remained seated, hands folded in my lap, watching as my husband kissed my best friend with a passion I'd forgotten he possessed. The string quartet struck up a celebratory tune, and the newly married couple turned to face their guests. That's when it happened. As they started down the aisle, Sarah's eyes met mine. The recognition, the shock, the flash of guilt, it all played across her face in a matter of seconds. She stumbled slightly, causing James to look up. Our eyes locked, and for a moment time stood still. I saw the color drain from his face, saw his steps falter, saw his hand tighten on Sarah's arm, but they couldn't stop. The recessional music played on, and they had to keep walking, had to pass right by me, had to pretend this was still their perfect moment. As they drew level with my pew, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Not an angry smile, not a bitter one. A genuine, peaceful smile that seemed to terrify them more than any outburst could have. Then I held up my phone, still displaying his last working late message, and watched as understanding dawned in his eyes. They passed by in a blur of white and black, the scent of Sarah's perfume, the one I'd given her for her last birthday, lingering in the air. The guests followed, some noticing me, others too caught up in the celebration to see the woman sitting alone in the last pew. Only once the church was empty did I finally stand. My legs were steady, my head clear. I walked to the altar where, moments ago, My life had been irrevocably changed. The flowers were beautiful, I had to admit. Sarah always did have excellent taste. I placed my wedding ring on the altar, right next to a fallen white rose petal. Then I turned and walked out of the church, leaving behind not just my ring, but the life I'd thought was mine. The sun was setting as I emerged, casting long shadows across the church steps. My phone buzzed one final time. Don't wait up. I deleted the message, then his number, then every photo we'd ever taken together. And as I drove away from St. Michael's Church, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. I drove aimlessly through Atlanta's crowded streets as the sun set, the city's lights blinking to life like stars appearing in a darkening sky. My gallery ID badge still hung around my neck, a reminder of the normal life I'd been living just hours ago. The radio played softly, some love song about forever that made me want to scream. I switched it off, preferring the hollow silence. My phone had been buzzing incessantly since I'd left the church. First came the panicked texts from James. Madison, please let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We need to talk. Then Sarah's messages started. I'm so sorry. We never meant to hurt you. Please answer your phone. Each notification felt like another small betrayal, another crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed was real. I found myself pulling into the parking lot of the High Museum of Art, where I'd first met James during my graduate internship. He'd been there reviewing an installation for his firm's investment portfolio, and I'd given him an impromptu tour. We'd ended up talking for hours about the intersection of art and emotion, about how certain pieces could capture the exact moment a heart breaks or soars. I wondered if there was any artwork in existence that could capture this moment, the precise sensation of watching your entire life unravel in a church pew. My phone rang again. This time it was Emma, my younger sister. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty. She'd be worried sick by now. News travels fast in our circle, and someone from the wedding had undoubtedly started spreading the story of my appearance at the ceremony. I could imagine the whispers, the shocked expressions, the pitying looks. Instead of answering, I got out of my car and walked to the museum's entrance. It was closed now, but I had my curator's universal access card, perks of being well-connected in Atlanta's art scene. The security guard, Marcus, looked surprised to see me. Ms. Reynolds, everything all right? I managed a smile that felt more like a grimace. Just need to check on something for tomorrow's exhibition. He hesitated, probably noting my disheveled appearance and red-rimmed eyes, but buzzed me in anyway. The empty museum halls felt like a sanctuary, my footsteps echoing off marble floors and white walls. I made my way to the contemporary wing, where an installation about betrayal in the digital age was being featured. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a group text from my mother to the family. Madison, sweetie, please let us know you're safe. We're all worried. Attached was a photo someone had taken at the wedding. James and Sarah walking down the aisle, their faces a mixture of shock and guilt as they passed my pew. Someone had already shared it in the family group chat. Wonderful. I sank onto a bench in front of a particularly striking piece, a shattered mirror reassembled to show fragmented reflections. Each broken piece reflected a different angle of the viewer, creating a kaleidoscope effect of perspective. I stared at my fractured reflection, wondering which version of myself was real. The successful curator, the betrayed wife, the abandoned friend, or this new person emerging from the wreckage. A new message popped up. Olivia Chen, my mentor. From graduate school and now director of the Chen Modern Art Foundation. Just heard. Come over. I have wine and zero tolerance for cheating bastards. For the first time since entering the church, I felt something other than numbness. Olivia had been through her own public scandal years ago when her husband left her for a famous artist they'd been representing. Instead of crumbling, she'd built one of the most prestigious art foundations in the Southeast. She'd also helped launch my career when everyone else thought I was too young for serious curation work. As I stood to leave, my wedding ring felt heavy in my pocket. On impulse, I took it out and placed it in front of the shattered mirror installation. It looked almost like an art piece itself, a small gold circle reflecting infinitely in the broken glass, each reflection showing a different angle of its destruction. Marcus looked concerned when I passed his desk. "Ms. Reynolds, this was just delivered for you." He handed me a thick manila envelope. The return address was James's law firm. I opened it in my car. Inside were divorce papers, already drawn up, dated 3 days ago. He'd had them prepared before the wedding. There was a post-it note attached in his familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry. I thought this would be easier." Easier. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, until the sound echoing in my car didn't sound human anymore. Easier than what? Easier than telling the truth? Easier than respecting our 8 years of marriage? Easier than not marrying my best friend? My phone lit up with another call from Emma. This time I answered. "Mads?" Her voice was small, worried. "Where are you?" "At the High Museum." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Did you know?" A pause. "No, God, no. None of us knew. Mom's ready to murder them both. Dad's already called his lawyer. Where are you going now?" I looked at the divorce papers on my passenger seat, then at Olivia's text message still glowing on my phone. "To get drunk with Olivia Chen and plot. My renaissance." Your what? My renaissance. My rebirth. My fucking triumph. The words came out stronger than I expected. They want a scandal? I'll give them a masterpiece. Emma was quiet for a moment. "Want company?" "Not tonight. Tonight I need to talk to someone who's been through this and came out stronger. But tomorrow? Tomorrow I might need my sister. I'll bring coffee and matches to burn his clothes." "No need," I said, starting my car. "I have something better in mind. Much better." As I drove toward Olivia's Buckhead mansion, a plan was already forming in my mind. James and Sarah thought they'd written the end of my story. They'd orchestrated what they thought would be my greatest humiliation. But they'd forgotten something crucial. In the art world, destruction often leads to creation. And I'd spent my entire career studying how to turn pain into beauty. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from James. "The papers explain everything. Please sign them quickly. We can make this painless." I smiled as I pulled up to Olivia's gate. Painless wasn't what I had in mind. Not anymore. What I had in mind was much more. Artistic. Olivia Chen's Buckhead mansion was a masterpiece of modern architecture. All clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Atlanta's glittering skyline. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed other cars already parked there. I recognized Diana Martinez's sleek Tesla and Catherine Wu's vintage Mercedes. Olivia hadn't just invited me for wine, she'd assembled her power circle. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Olivia stood there, elegant as always in a black silk jumpsuit, her silver hair styled in her signature sharp bob. Behind her, I could see Diana and Catherine in her sunken living room, both holding wine glasses and wearing expressions that suggested they were ready for war. "I see the vultures are circling," I said, attempting humor. "Darling," Olivia pulled me into a fierce hug. "We're not vultures, we're phoenixes, and you're about to become one too." Diana Martinez, the ruthless real estate mogul who'd transformed half of Atlanta's abandoned warehouses into thriving art spaces, raised her wine glass. "To Madison's resurrection." "You might want to hear my plan first," I said, dropping my bag and the manila envelope of divorce papers on Olivia's pristine white couch. Catherine, who'd built the city's most successful art investment firm from scratch after her own divorce 10 years ago, picked up the envelope. He had these prepared before the wedding? Amateur move. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Angela. She's the best divorce attorney in the Southeast, and she particularly enjoys destroying men who think they're clever. Wait, I held up my hand. Before we go nuclear, I need you all to hear me out. I accepted the glass of wine Olivia pressed into my hands, a red so dark it looked almost black. Like my current state of mind. I don't want just a divorce settlement. I want a renaissance. The three women exchanged glances. They'd known me since I was a graduate student, hungry, ambitious, but always playing it safe, always following the rules. The Madison they knew would have signed those papers, accepted a decent settlement, and disappeared gracefully to lick her wounds. But that Madison had died in a church pew about 3 hours ago. The Perspectives in Pain exhibition opens next week at Morton, I continued, pacing Olivia's marble floors. It's supposed to be my crowning achievement as lead curator. Pieces from artists exploring personal trauma and transformation. James and Sarah were supposed to be there, playing the perfect supportive husband and best friend. I took a long sip of wine. I want to add a piece to the exhibition. Diana leaned forward. You're not an artist, Madison. No, but I know every major artist in this city, and I know exactly who could take this story, this betrayal, and turn it into something magnificent. I pulled up an image on my phone and showed it to them. Reza Nassiri. Holy shit, Catherine breathed. Reza was the art world's equivalent of a nuclear weapon. His installations about betrayal and social performances had ruined careers and made international headlines. He was brilliant, merciless, and nearly impossible to book. He owes me a favor, Olivia said slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. From that scandal with the forged Rothko last year. Madison, are you sure? This won't just burn bridges, it'll incinerate them. Good. I finished my wine. Those bridges led nowhere anyway, but I need more than just Reza. I need a complete transformation. Catherine, you mentioned Angela for the divorce? Catherine was already texting. She'll meet you tomorrow at 9 a.m. She's canceling her other appointments. This is exactly the kind of case she lives for. Diana, remember that abandoned gallery space in West Midtown you showed me last month? The one with the industrial windows? An exposed brick? Diana's eyes lit up. The old textile factory? It's perfect for a gallery space, but it needs at least $500,000 in renovations. I have savings, I said. And James doesn't know about my grandmother's inheritance. He thought I donated it all to the museum's endowment fund. I smiled. I only donated half. Madison, Olivia set down her glass. Are you saying what I think you're saying? James always said my dream of opening my own gallery was too risky. Sarah always agreed with him, said I should focus on being a good curator, a good wife. I pulled out my phone, showing them the dozens of unread messages from James and Sarah. Well, I'm not a wife anymore, and after next week, Morton Gallery might not want me as their curator. Because of Reza's piece, Catherine nodded. It'll be spectacular, but spectacularly controversial, I finished. Morton's board of directors includes James's father. I'll probably be asked to resign, so I might as well burn it all down beautifully. Diana was already pulling up property documents on her tablet. The factory space is still available. I can have the paperwork ready tomorrow. But Mads, this is fast. Maybe we should... They planned their wedding while having Sunday dinners. At my house, I cut her off. They prepared divorce papers while helping me plan next week's exhibition. They've had months to orchestrate my humiliation. I'm done moving slowly. Olivia walked to her wall of windows, looking out over the city. You know what my mother told me when Philippe left me for that sculptor? She turned back to face us. She said, "The best revenge isn't just success. It's success that makes them question every decision they ever made." Madison, darling, what exactly do you have in mind? I pulled up another image on my phone. the floor plan for the factory space. I want to turn it into more than just a gallery. I want to create a space for artists who've been told to play it safe, to wait their turn, to follow the rules. A place for revolution in both art and life. I looked at the 3 women who'd shaped Atlanta's art scene, and I want to announce it at next week's exhibition opening, right after Raisa's piece debuts. Catherine started laughing. James and Sarah will be there. They can't not be. Half their social circle will be attending. They have to pretend everything's normal. Exactly. I picked up the divorce papers. And instead of finding me broken, instead of a quick, quiet divorce, they'll watch me rise from the ashes they thought they'd left me in. Diana was already making calls about the factory space. Catherine was texting Angela about expanding the divorce strategy. And Olivia? Olivia was looking at me with something like pride. You know, she said softly, I always wondered when this version of you would emerge. The one who's ready to set the world on fire instead of just curating it. My phone buzzed again. Another message from James. Please be reasonable about this. We can handle it quietly. I deleted the message without responding. Reasonable was no longer in my vocabulary. And quiet? Well, as every art lover knows, the most powerful pieces are rarely quiet. They'd orchestrated what they thought was my ending. But in art, as in life, endings are just beginnings painted in different colors. And I was about to create my masterpiece. Angela Morrison's law office occupied the entire top floor of a midtown high-rise, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the church where I'd watched my life implode just 18 hours ago. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night at Olivia's, plotting and planning until sunrise painted the sky in shades of revenge. So, Angela leaned back in her leather chair, her red-soled shoes propped on her glass desk as she reviewed the divorce papers. He had these drawn up before the wedding. Did you know that in Georgia, getting married while divorce papers are already prepared can be considered fraud? I sipped the espresso her assistant had brought in. No, I didn't. It gets better. She flipped through the documents with manicured fingers. He's offering a settlement that's insultingly low given Georgia's equitable distribution laws. And she paused, a predatory smile crossing her face. He used his own law firm to prepare these. That's a direct conflict of interest, since they've represented both of you in various capacities over the years. What does that mean? It means, my dear, that we're going to eat him alive. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. Now, tell me about this exhibition plan of yours. Normally, I advise clients to lay low during proceedings, but Catherine tells me you're planning something rather spectacular. I outlined my plans. Raisa's installation, the new gallery announcement, all of it. With each detail, Angela's smile grew wider. Usually, she said when I finished, I have to talk clients out of their emotional revenge schemes. But this? She tapped her pen against her desk. This is different. This isn't just revenge. This is Renaissance. And legally, we can make it work to our advantage. She stood, walking to a wall of legal texts. You see, by publicly showcasing the impact of his actions through art, we're essentially documenting emotional damages. By announcing your new business venture at a high-profile event, we're establishing your professional trajectory he damaged through years of suppression. And by doing it all with such style, we're ensuring the court of public opinion will be firmly on your side. My phone buzzed. A text from Raisa. Meeting in 30 at Octane Coffee. Olivia told me everything. I'm in. I have to go. I stood, gathering my things. I'm meeting Reza Nassiri to discuss the installation. Angela raised an perfectly shaped eyebrow. The Reza Nassiri? The one who turned that tech CEO's affair into a viral video installation that crashed the company's stock? That's the one. Perfect. She handed me a card. My private number. Call me after the meeting. And Madison? I turned at the door. Make it hurt. Octane Coffee was packed with the usual mix of tech entrepreneurs and creative types when I arrived. Reza sat in a corner, his signature black turtleneck making him look more like a poet than an artist known for destroying reputations through masterpieces. Madison Reynolds, he stood as I approached, kissing both my cheeks in his European way. I must say, when Olivia called, I was intrigued. But now, seeing you here, I'm inspired. I sat across from him, noting how every artist and gallery intern in the place was trying not to stare. Reza rarely took meetings in public. Tell me. He leaned forward, his accent thickening with intensity. What do you envision? I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo from the wedding, the one capturing James and Sarah's faces as they passed my pew. I want to turn private betrayal into public art. I want to transform humiliation into power. Ah, his eyes lit up. You want more than revenge. You want metamorphosis. Exactly. I showed him the gallery floor plan. The installation will debut here during the opening night of my exhibition. Everyone who matters in Atlanta's art scene will be there, including them. Reza was already sketching on a napkin. I'm thinking video installation. Multiple screens showing text messages, security footage, social media posts, all the digital breadcrumbs of betrayal. But displayed like Renaissance paintings, gilt-framed and grand, and in the center. The wedding photo? No, he smiled. You. Live. The ultimate piece of performance art. The betrayed becoming the creator. The victim becoming the victor. My heart raced. Can you have it ready in a week? He laughed. For this? I'll have it ready in 5 days. But Madison, his expression grew serious. You understand what this means? Once I create this, there's no going back, no quiet divorce, no graceful exit. Good. I showed him the divorce papers. They didn't want it quiet anyway. They just wanted it on their terms. My phone lit up with a text from James. Maddie, please, let's talk about this like adults. Reza saw the message and smiled. They always want to talk like adults after they've behaved like children. Tell me, what was your wedding song? At Last by Etta James. Why? Because, he began sketching again, more frantically now, we're going to need a soundtrack for the installation. Something to underscore the irony. And speaking of irony, he looked up. What if we hold a mock wedding? Not just showing their betrayal, but transforming it. You, marrying your own power, your own future. In the middle of an art exhibition? Art is life. Life is art. And revenge? He grinned. Revenge is the sweetest art of all. Just then, Sarah walked into Octane. She froze when she saw me, her designer honeymoon luggage still tagged at her side. She must have been stopping for coffee before heading to the airport. Reza watched the scene with artist's eyes. Ah, perfect timing. Watch this. Before I could stop him, he pulled out his phone and started recording. Sarah stood paralyzed, as other patrons began noticing her, whispers spreading like ripples in still water. The barista, who'd obviously heard the gossip, deliberately turned her back. This, Reza whispered, still filming, this is just the beginning. The social discomfort, the public judgment, it's already starting. By next week, it will be a symphony. I stood, gathering my things. As I passed Sarah, I paused. I hope the honeymoon is worth it, I said softly, because the return trip is going to be hell. Outside, the Atlanta sun was blazing. My phone buzzed with a message from Diana. Factory space is ours. Contractors starting tomorrow. Time to build your empire. I showed the message to Reza, who was still sketching frantically. Perfect, he said. Every empire needs a creation myth. And yours? Yours begins with fire. As my Uber arrived to take me to my next meeting, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in Octane's window. I looked different somehow. Stronger, sharper, more defined. Like a sculpture emerging from raw stone. They say revenge is a dish best, served cold. But I wasn't serving revenge. I was serving transformation. And that's best served at the temperature of a phoenix's flames. The old textile factory in West Midtown loomed before me, its brick facade catching the afternoon light. Diana had already arranged for a construction crew to begin work, their trucks lining the street like soldiers preparing for battle. The space that would become my gallery, my Declaration of Independence, was currently a canvas of exposed brick, soaring ceilings, and endless possibility. The structural engineer says it's solid gold. Diana walked beside me, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. These old industrial buildings were built to last. We can start renovations immediately. She gestured to a tall woman in a hard hat who stood reviewing blueprints. Madison, meet Carmen Rodriguez, the best gallery architect in the Southeast. Carmen's handshake was firm, confident. Diana showed me your vision board. I have to say, it's ambitious for a 6-day timeline. Can it be done? I asked, watching workers already beginning to prep the walls. With enough money and the right crew, anything's possible. She spread the blueprints across a makeshift table. I'm thinking we keep the industrial elements, the exposed brick, the steel beams, but add modern lighting systems, floating walls for flexible exhibition space, and she pointed to the far end of the building, a performance area for installations like your opening piece. My phone buzzed. James again. The firm's partners are asking questions. Please don't do anything rash. I showed the message to Diana, who snorted. Worried about his precious reputation at the firm? Wait until they see what Reza's planning. Speaking of which, my phone lit up with a text from Reza. First footage edited. Meeting your sister at Morton Gallery now to film the empty exhibition space. The contrast will be magnificent. Emma had thrown herself into the project with surprising enthusiasm. Nobody messes with my sister, she declared that morning, showing up at my temporary office at Olivia's foundation with coffee and a determination to help document everything for Reza's installation. Ms. Reynolds? Carmen's voice pulled me back to the present. There's something else you should see. She led us up a metal staircase to the second floor. This space wasn't in the original plans, but she pushed open a heavy door, revealing a sprawling loft area with windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. It could be your private gallery, Diana said softly, or your home. Either way, it's yours. Home. The word hit me like a physical force. I hadn't been back to my house, our house, since the wedding. Emma had gone to collect some of my things, reporting back that Sarah's car was in the driveway. They'd apparently delayed their honeymoon to deal with the situation. My phone buzzed again. Sarah this time. Please, your things are still here. We need to talk about arrangements. Actually, I turned to Carmen. Can you incorporate living space up here? I think it's time for a complete fresh start. She was already sketching. We can create a stunning live workspace, modern, open, with a private elevator from the gallery, a true artist's residence. Speaking of artists, Diana checked her phone. Catherine just confirmed the first 3 artists for your opening roster. All rising stars who've been turned down by traditional galleries for being too controversial. They're ready to jump ship from their current representation as soon as you open. My phone lit up with a call from Angela. Harrison and Cooper just called, she said without preamble, referring to James's law firm. They're trying to expedite the divorce proceedings. Apparently, James is worried about potential professional complications. I put the phone on speaker. What did you tell them? I told them that given the circumstances of fraud, potential career sabotage, and emotional damages, we'll be taking our time to build a proper case. Oh, and I might have mentioned Reza Nassiri's name. The senior partner almost choked. Diana was grinning now. How long before they realize we're not just fighting the divorce terms? They're starting to figure it out, Angela sounded pleased. James tried to file an emergency injunction to prevent any public disparagement. I shut that down immediately. You can't legally prevent art, especially when it's truth-based. A construction worker approached Carmen with questions about the lighting system, and she stepped away to handle it. I walked to the windows, looking out over the city I'd always called home. Somewhere out there, James and Sarah were probably huddled with lawyers trying to contain what was coming. They didn't understand that some things can't be contained. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Reza just showed me the first cut of the installation. It's beyond anything we imagined. Also, the foundation board approved your grant proposal. The money will be in your account tomorrow. I showed Diana the message. With the grant and my inheritance, we can fast-track everything. She nodded, already typing on her tablet. I'll double the construction crew, work them in shifts. Carmen's team can start on the interior while they're finishing the structural work. She paused, looking up. You know they'll try to stop this, right? James, his firm, maybe even some of the more conservative gallery owners in town. Let them try. I walked the space, imagining it filled with art, with people, with life. Every attempt they make to stop us just becomes part of the story, part of the art. Speaking of art, Diana checked her watch. We should head to Morton. Emma and Reza are waiting, and you need to maintain appearances at work until the exhibition. As we headed down the stairs, Carmen called out, Ms. Reynolds, what color do you want the gallery walls painted? I thought about it for a moment. Phoenix red, I said finally, the color of rebirth. Outside, the construction crew was already removing old windows, the sound of their work echoing down the street like a battle cry. My phone buzzed one final time, a group text from James, to our entire social circle. As you may have heard, Madison and I are going through some changes. We ask for privacy during this difficult time. Diana read it over my shoulder and laughed. Privacy? Oh, honey. She linked her arm through mine as we walked to her car. They have no idea what's coming. I smiled, thinking of Reza's installation, taking shape, of the gallery rising from industrial ashes, of the look on their faces when they realized what I was building from the wreckage of their betrayal. No, I agreed. They really don't. Because while they were asking for privacy, I was preparing to turn private pain into public power. And unlike their secret wedding, this show would be one nobody could ignore. Morton Gallery's pristine white. Walls felt different now, like a stage being set for the final act of a play. I walked through the empty exhibition space where Perspectives in Pain would open in just 5 days, watching Emma help Reza's team set up hidden cameras to capture the pre-installation footage. Each corner of the gallery held memories of my old life, meetings with James, lunches with Sarah, dreams I'd put on hold to be the perfect wife and friend. Madison. Richard Morton's voice cut through my thoughts. The gallery owner stood in the doorway, his usually immaculate suit looking slightly rumpled. My office. Now. I caught Emma's worried glance as I followed Richard down the hallway. Through the glass walls of his office, I could see James's father, senior partner William Cooper, already seated inside. Perfect. Sit down, Madison. Richard gestured to a chair. Bill here has brought some concerns to my attention. I'm sure he has. I remained standing, noting how William's jaw clenched at my defiance. How was the wedding, Bill? Sorry I missed the reception. This isn't a joke, Madison. William leaned forward. James told me about this. Installation you're planning. About your new gallery venture. You need to think very carefully about your next moves. I have thought carefully. I've thought about nothing else since watching your son marry my best friend while texting me he was working late. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Madison, you're one of our most talented curators, But this exhibition, these plans with Reza Nasiri, it's not what Morton Gallery represents. And what does Morton Gallery represent, Richard? Safe art? Comfortable art? Art that doesn't make powerful men uncomfortable. That's enough. William stood. I've been patient because you're understandably emotional. But if you continue with this spectacle, there will be consequences. The firm has significant influence in Atlanta's art scene. I laughed, the sound echoing off the expensive minimalist furniture. Consequences? Like my husband marrying my best friend? Like finding divorce papers dated before their wedding? Those kinds of consequences? Madison. Richard's voice was gentle, patronizing. Think about your career. William and I can ensure you land softly somewhere else. A fresh start, away from all this drama. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Reza just leaked a teaser of the installation to his Instagram. Art blogs are already buzzing. You might want to check your email. I pulled up my phone's web browser. Sure enough, Reza had posted a cryptic 15-second video. Quick cuts between wedding photos, text messages, and security footage, all overlaid with the haunting strains of "At Last." The art world was already speculating about his next big project. Actually, I turned my phone to show them the rapidly climbing view count. I don't think away from all this is an option anymore. The story's already out there. The only question is who gets to tell it. William's face reddened. You're making a mistake. James was trying to handle this privately, diplomatically. By having divorce papers drawn up before his wedding? By using his firm's resources to try to silence me? That kind of diplomacy? That's not... William started, but my phone interrupted him, ringing with a call from Angela. Excuse me, I smiled sweetly. I need to take this. It's my lawyer. I answered on speaker. Yes, Angela? Just wanted you to know that the judge denied their emergency injunction attempt. Again. Also, 3 more artists just contacted us about showing in your gallery's opening season. Apparently, Reza's teaser has everyone talking. William's face went from red to purple. Richard slumped in his chair. Wonderful news, I said clearly. Oh, and Angela? Please let James know that any further attempts to interfere with my exhibition will be added to Reza's installation. Documentation is art, after all. After ending the call, I turned back to the men. Now, was there anything else you wanted to discuss about my career? Richard found his voice first. Madison, please. The gallery's reputation will survive. In fact, I walked to the door. I suspect being the venue for Reza Nasiri's most talked about installation yet will do wonders for Morton's reputation. Unless, of course, you'd like to try to stop the exhibition? I'm sure the press would love to hear why. Back in the exhibition space, Emma was directing the lighting team while Reza's assistant filmed. Everything okay? She asked, seeing my expression. Better than okay. I watched the crew working, transforming the space that had once felt like a cage into a launch pad. They're scared. Good. Emma checked her phone. Oh, wow. Reza's teaser is going viral. Sarah's already made her Instagram private, and James's law firm's social media is getting flooded with comments. My phone lit up with a text from Diana. Construction crew working through the night. Gallery will be ready on schedule. Also, just got a call from Atlanta magazine. They want to do a feature on Atlanta's newest and most controversial gallery space. Should I set up the interview? Before I could respond, another text came. Through, from Sarah's sister Claire. Just saw Reza's teaser. Call me. There are things you should know about what really happened. The plot thickens. Emma peered at my phone. Want me to talk to her first? No. I saved Claire's number. Every piece of this story belongs in the installation. Every betrayal, every revelation, every attempt to control the narrative. It's all part of the art now. Reza himself appeared. In the doorway, his signature black turtleneck dusty from working with the camera equipment. "Madison, darling, come see what we've captured. The contrast between this sterile space and what we're about to unleash? Magnificent." As I followed him to view the footage, my phone buzzed one final time. "James." "Maddie, please, you've made your point. Let's end this quietly, with dignity." I showed the message to Reza, who smiled his artist's smile. They always want dignity after denying it to others. Shall we show them what real dignity looks like? "Yes," I said, watching his team transform the gallery into a cathedral of consequences. "Let's show them exactly what it looks like when the quiet wife, the supportive friend, the safe curator, finally decides to make some noise. Because while they had chosen secrecy and shame, I was choosing spectacle and strength. And in 5 days, everyone would understand exactly what that meant." The Atlanta Botanical Gardens Cafe felt like neutral territory, far from both the Morton Gallery and my soon-to-be gallery space. Claire sat across from me, fidgeting with her coffee cup, looking nothing like her confident sister. The Japanese maples around us were turning crimson, matching the construction dust on my shoes from visiting the site earlier. "Sarah doesn't know I'm here," Claire started, her voice barely above a whisper. But after seeing Reza's teaser, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. It's been eating at me for months. "How long have you known?" I kept my voice steady, remembering Reza's assistant discreetly filming from 3 tables away. Every revelation was part of the art now. "Since Christmas." Claire's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. "Sarah left her laptop open at Mom's house. I saw their messages, their plans. But that's not why I called you here." She hesitated, then pushed her phone across the table. "You need to see the whole picture." I scrolled through what appeared to be hundreds of screenshots, conversations, between Sarah and James dating back over a year. But it wasn't just their romance I was seeing. It was a calculated dismantling of my life. "They didn't just have an affair," Claire's voice cracked. "They systematically isolated you. Every time a gallery opportunity came up for you, Sarah would convince James to discourage you. Every time you wanted to take a risk with your career, they'd team up to talk you down." I kept scrolling, my hands growing cold. Messages about undermining my confidence, about keeping me safe and stable while they planned their future. Sarah had actively sabotaged 3 major career opportunities for me, all while playing the supportive best friend. "There's more." Claire pulled up a specific conversation. "You know that grant you were going to apply for last year? The one that could have funded your own gallery? The one Sarah convinced me I wasn't ready for? Read this." The messages made my blood freeze. Sarah had submitted her own application, using insights she'd gained from our conversations, from my dreams. She hadn't won, but the betrayal was clear. She'd tried to steal my vision while convincing me to give up on it. My phone buzzed. "Olivia. Construction crew found something interesting in the factory walls. Get here when you can. Bring Reza." "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked Claire, forwarding the screenshots to Angela. "Because Sarah's not just my sister. She was my hero. But this?" She gestured to her phone. "This is calculated cruelty. And now she's worried about her reputation? About how your exhibition will affect her new life? She deserves whatever's coming." Another text, this time from Reza. "Darling, the installation footage from Morton is breathtaking, but we need something more. Intimate. Dinner tonight? Bring Claire's evidence. Art is truth revealed." "There's one more thing," Claire said quietly. "James's firm? They're planning to sue Morton Gallery if they go through with the exhibition. William Cooper is calling in favors, trying to pressure other galleries to blacklist you." I smiled, thinking of the contract Diana had already drawn up with Morton. the way Catherine had quietly bought enough shares in the gallery to have significant board influence. Let them try. Madison, Claire reached across the table, gripping my hand. Make it count. Make it all count. My phone lit up again. Emma. Just got a call from that art critic from the New Yorker. Apparently, Reza's teaser has them intrigued. They're sending someone to cover the exhibition opening. I showed Claire the message. Still think they can stop this? No. She sat back, something like admiration crossing her face. But they'll try. Sarah's already called Mom in tears about the social fallout. Their honeymoon's been completely ruined. They're too scared to leave town before the exhibition. Good. I stood, gathering my things. They should be here to see it, to see what happens when you try to bury someone's dreams. Madison, Claire called as I turned to leave. The factory space. It's what you wanted to build last year. Isn't it? What Sarah tried to steal? No, I smiled. It's better. Because now I'm not holding anything back. At the construction site, Olivia waited with Carmen and a team of workers. They'd uncovered something during the renovation. Old photographs hidden in the walls. Black and white. Images of women working the textile machines, their faces proud despite the harsh conditions. The factory was women-owned, Carmen explained, carefully handling the fragile photos. In 1920, one of the first in Atlanta, the owner's husband tried to steal it from her, but she fought back, turned it into one of the most successful businesses in the city. Reza, who'd arrived moments after me, was already filming, his artist's eye seeing the connections. History repeats, he murmured. A woman's space, taken, reclaimed, reborn. Madison, darling, these photos, they need to be part of the installation. My phone buzzed. James, the firm is serious about legal action. Please don't force our hand. Then Sarah. I know Claire talked to you. Whatever she said, there's another side to the story. Finally, William Cooper. Think carefully about your next move. Careers are built on relationships, and you're burning bridges. I showed the messages to Olivia, who laughed. They still think they have power here. That's almost cute. Looking around at the space, my space, I felt a surge of clarity. The hidden photos, Claire's revelations, the mounting pressure from James and his firm. It was all part of a larger pattern. A pattern of women being told to stay small, stay safe, stay quiet. Reza, I turned to the artist, how do you feel about incorporating historical parallels into the installation? His eyes lit up. A commentary on generational patterns of control and liberation? Brilliant. We can project these factory photos behind the wedding footage. As he sketched frantically in his notebook, I walked the space that would soon be my gallery. The construction crews had worked miracles. The bones of my vision were already visible in the renovated walls, the soaring ceilings, the perfect light. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number. Saw Reza's teaser. I'm James's secretary. We should talk. There's more to this story than anyone knows. I saved the number, thinking of Claire's screenshots, of the factory, photos of all the pieces falling into place. They'd tried to write my story for me, to keep me in my assigned role. But they'd forgotten something crucial. The most powerful art comes from breaking the frame. Watershed Distillery was packed for a Tuesday evening, but the back corner booth offered enough privacy for what promised to be an interesting conversation. Rebecca Chen, James's executive secretary for the past 5 years, looked nothing like I'd expected. Gone was the meek assistant I'd met at office parties. In her place sat a sharp-eyed woman with a laptop and an external hard drive. First, she placed the drive on the table. You should know I'm leaving the firm. My resignation letter is already drafted. Second, she glanced around before continuing. What they did to you, it's not the first time. Reza's assistant posing. As a patron at the bar, adjusted his camera angle slightly. We'd planned this meeting carefully. Every revelation now was potential material for the installation. What do you mean? I sipped my bourbon, watching Rebecca's face. James and William Cooper have a pattern. She opened her laptop, pulling up a folder labeled Insurance. 3 years ago, there was another associate at the firm, brilliant woman named Maya Rodriguez. She was on track to make partner until she started dating James. My stomach clenched. What happened? Same playbook. He pursued her while married to you, convinced her they had something special, then orchestrated her professional downfall. When he got bored, William helped cover it up. She left law altogether. And Sarah? Was she involved? Rebecca's laugh was bitter. Sarah was the smokescreen. Every time James needed an alibi for being with Maya, he'd say he was meeting Sarah. For gallery business. You trusted Sarah so completely you never questioned it. She turned her laptop toward me, showing emails, calendar entries, a meticulous documentation of deception. I kept everything. Originally as protection for myself, but now... She gestured to Reza's teaser playing silently on her screen. Now I think it needs to be part of the bigger story. My phone buzzed. Angela. Just got a call from Maya Rodriguez. She saw the teaser. She wants to talk. Then another message from Diana. Galleries ahead of schedule. But there's something else. Found records of Sarah trying to buy the factory space 3 months ago. She was going to use it for her own gallery. The pieces were falling into perfectly terrible place. There's more, Rebecca continued, pulling up another folder. Remember when James convinced you not to apply for that curator position at the High Museum? Said it would be too much stress? Too political? I nodded, remembering how supportive he'd seemed, how he'd framed his discouragement as protection. He was working with their board on a major acquisition. Sarah was positioned to get the job. They'd planned it all. But she didn't get it, and that's when. When they decided to stop hiding, I finished. When they decided I was in their way. Rebecca nodded. The divorce papers were drafted the day Sarah lost the High Museum position. I think they blamed you somehow. As if your existence was the reason she didn't get it. My phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Maya Rodriguez is at my house. You need to hear this. Bring Rebecca. Why didn't you say something sooner? I asked Rebecca as we gathered her evidence. She paused, considering. Fear, at first. Then shame for staying quiet. But mostly, I didn't think anyone would believe me over William Cooper's son. Until I saw Reza's teaser. Until I saw you fighting back. The drive to Olivia's Buckhead mansion was silent, both of us processing the implications of what we'd discovered. My phone buzzed continuously. James, Sarah, William, all trying to contain what was rapidly becoming uncontainable. Maya Rodriguez stood at Olivia's window when we arrived, cutting a striking figure in her designer suit. She turned as we entered, her expression fierce. So, she said without preamble, you're the wife? I was the mistake. And Sarah? She laughed, darkly. Sarah was the endgame. He played us all. Tell her about William's involvement, Rebecca urged, setting up her laptop. Maya's story poured out, a calculated seduction, promises of partnership, then an orchestrated professional destruction. When she became inconvenient, William had blackballed her from every major firm in Atlanta, using his connections to paint her as unstable, unreliable. But I kept records, she smiled, pulling out her own drive. Every message, every threat, every lie. I was waiting for the right moment, the right way to expose them. And then I saw Reza's teaser. Reza himself materialized from Olivia's study, his camera already rolling. Ladies, he said softly, I believe we're creating something far bigger than a simple Story of infidelity. This is about power, about systematic suppression, about women being silenced. First, she placed the drive on the table. You should know I'm leaving the firm. My resignation letter is already drafted. Second, she glanced around before continuing. What they did to you, it's not the first time. Ray's assistant, posing as a patron at the bar, adjusted his camera angle slightly. We'd planned this meeting carefully. Every revelation now was potential material for the installation. What do you mean? I sipped my bourbon, watching Rebecca's face. James and William Cooper have a pattern. She opened her laptop, pulling up a folder labeled Insurance. 3 years ago, there was another associate at the firm, brilliant woman named Maya Rodriguez. She was on track to make partner until she started dating James. My stomach clenched. What happened? Same playbook. He pursued her while married to you, convinced her they had something special, then orchestrated her professional downfall. When he got bored, William helped cover it up. She left law altogether. And Sarah? Was she involved? Rebecca's laugh was bitter. Sarah was the smokescreen. Every time James needed an alibi for being with Maya, he'd say he was meeting Sarah. For gallery business. You trusted Sarah so completely you never questioned it. She turned her laptop toward me, showing emails, calendar entries, a meticulous documentation of deception. I kept everything. Originally as protection for myself, but now... She gestured to Ray's teaser playing silently on her screen. Now I think it needs to be part of the bigger story. My phone buzzed. Angela. Just got a call from Maya Rodriguez. She saw the teaser. She wants to talk. Then another message from Diana. Galleries ahead of schedule. But there's something else. Found records of Sarah trying to buy the factory space 3 months ago. She was going to use it for her own gallery. The pieces were falling into perfectly terrible place. There's more, Rebecca continued, pulling up another folder. Remember when James convinced you not to apply for that curator position at the High Museum? Said it would be too much stress? Too political? I nodded, remembering how supportive he'd seemed, how he'd framed his discouragement as protection. He was working with their board on a major acquisition. Sarah was positioned to get the job. They'd planned it all. But she didn't get it, and that's when. When they decided to stop hiding, I finished. When they decided I was in their way. Rebecca nodded. The divorce papers were drafted the day Sarah lost the High Museum position. I think they blamed you somehow. As if your existence was the reason she didn't get it. My phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Maya Rodriguez is at my house. You need to hear this. Bring Rebecca. Why didn't you say something sooner? I asked Rebecca as we gathered her evidence. She paused, considering. Fear, at first. Then shame for staying quiet. But mostly, I didn't think anyone would believe me over William Cooper's son. Until I saw Ray's teaser. Until I saw you fighting back. The drive to Olivia's Buckhead mansion was silent, both of us processing the implications of what we'd discovered. My phone buzzed continuously. James, Sarah, William, all trying to contain what was rapidly becoming uncontainable. Maya Rodriguez stood at Olivia's window when we arrived, cutting a striking figure in her designer suit. She turned as we entered, her expression fierce. So, she said without preamble, you're the wife? I was the mistake. And Sarah? She laughed, darkly. Sarah was the endgame. He played us all. Tell her about William's involvement, Rebecca urged, setting up her laptop. Maya's story poured out, a calculated seduction, promises of partnership, then an orchestrated professional destruction. When she became inconvenient, William had blackballed her from every major firm in Atlanta, using his connections to paint her as unstable, unreliable. But I kept records, she smiled, pulling out her own drive. Every message, every threat, every lie. I was waiting for the right moment, the right way to expose them. And then I saw Reza's teaser. Reza himself materialized from Olivia's study, his camera already rolling. "Ladies," he said softly, "I believe we're creating something far bigger than a simple story of infidelity. This is about power, about systematic suppression, about women being silenced. You're going to destroy everything." "No," I corrected him. "I'm going to transform everything. There's a difference." His phone buzzed again. Sarah, I assumed, from the way his expression shifted. "She lost the high museum job because of you," he said suddenly. "If you hadn't been in the picture, she lost it because she wasn't the best candidate." I cut him off. "Just like she's about to lose a lot more. Did you know she tried to buy my gallery space 3 months ago while helping me plan the exhibition she knew would be my last?" That seemed to genuinely surprise him. "What? Oh, you didn't know that part? Interesting. Seems like everyone's been keeping secrets." My phone lit up with a text from Maya. "Just finished my interview with the New Yorker. They want to talk to Rebecca next. This is going national." I showed him the message, watching his carefully constructed world crumble a little more. "You can't," he started, but his voice failed him. "I already am. But here's what you can do, James. You can go back to your firm, to your father, to your new wife, and you can tell them what's coming. Tell them that every attempt to silence women, every career they've destroyed, every life they've tried to control, it's all about to become art." Reza chose that moment to approach, camera in hand. "Madison, darling, we need to finalize the placement for the Maya Rodriguez footage." "Oh, hello, James. Perfect timing. Would you mind if I got a reaction shot for authenticity?" James backed away, nearly tripping over a sculpture base. "This isn't over," he managed, but the threat sounded hollow. "No," I agreed, watching him retreat. "It's just beginning. The exhibition opens in 3 days. Make sure you and Sarah have good seats. You won't want to miss this show." After he fled, Reza reviewed the footage on his camera with satisfaction. Beautiful. The fear in his eyes, the way he kept looking at his phone, it's perfect for the power-confronted segment. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Sarah. "James just called. Please, we can explain everything." I showed it to Reza, who smiled his artist's smile. They always want to explain once they've lost control of the narrative. Shall we give their explanations a special place in the installation? Looking around the gallery space that had once felt like my cage and now felt like my launch pad, I nodded. Put it right next to the footage of their wedding. Let everyone see how working late becomes, "Please let us explain." Because while they'd been writing their version of my story in secret, I was about to project mine on every wall of the quay. Morton Gallery. And unlike their wedding, this was one show everyone would be talking about. 2 days before the exhibition opening, I stood in my nearly completed gallery space, watching workers install the final lighting system. The morning sun streamed through the restored industrial windows, catching the fresh phoenix red paint on the accent walls. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the New Yorker piece went live. Journalists, art critics, and most surprisingly, women from law firms across Atlanta, all with their own stories about William Cooper's mentorship program. "Madison." Diana's voice echoed through the space. "We have a situation at Morton." I turned to find her striding toward me, tablet in hand. "What now?" "William Cooper just called an emergency board meeting. He's trying to leverage his connections to shut down the exhibition." She showed me her screen, a flurry of emails between board members. But here's where it gets interesting. Catherine's block of shares has them deadlocked. They can't make a move without a majority vote. My phone lit up with a text from Maya. "Just got a cease and desist letter from Harrison and Cooper. Forwarded it to Angela. They're getting desperate." They're not the only ones, Diana continued, scrolling through her tablet. Sarah's family. Foundation is threatening to pull their annual donation to Morton. But, she smiled wickedly, Olivia's foundation just offered to double it. Reza appeared from the upper level where he'd been directing the installation of screens. Darling, you need to see this. The factory photos we found? I had my team research the original owner, Elizabeth Montgomery, and guess who just reached out through her granddaughter? Before he could elaborate, Emma burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. Mads, you're not going to believe who I just ran into at Octane. Sarah? I guessed, noting my sister's barely contained glee. Better. James's secretary, from before Rebecca. The one who mysteriously resigned 3 years ago. She has emails. So many emails. The pieces were falling into place faster than I could process them. My phone buzzed again. Angela. Judge just threw out their request for an emergency injunction, called it a transparent attempt at prior restraint. Also, Maya's evidence has attracted the attention of the State Bar Association. William Cooper's having a very bad morning. I forwarded the message to Olivia, who responded immediately. Perfect timing. The Foundation Board just approved an additional grant for your gallery's first year of operations. Apparently, they're quite impressed with your innovative approach to artistic social commentary. Madison, Carmen's voice cut through the chaos as she descended from the upper level. The living space is ready. Want to see your new home? I followed her up the private elevator, my phone still buzzing with updates. The loft space had been transformed. Polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and windows that made the Atlanta skyline look like an installation piece itself. The movers can bring your things tomorrow, Carmen said, but I was barely listening. On the far wall, Reza's team had mounted a single screen, a test for the exhibition. It played silently. James and Sarah walking down the church aisle, their faces frozen in shock as they passed my pew. It's perfect, I said, but not about the apartment. My phone lit up with a call from Claire. Mom just called. Sarah's hysterical. The High Museum Board is reviewing her involvement in their hiring process after the New Yorker piece. Something about ethical concerns and pattern of behavior. How's that honeymoon planning going? I couldn't help asking. They canceled it. James hasn't left the firm since yesterday. Apparently some junior associates are talking about coming forward with their own stories. A text from Rebecca popped up. William Cooper just called an all-hands meeting. They're in damage control mode. 3 more women have contacted HR with complaints. Then from Catherine. Morton Board. Meeting just ended. William Cooper tried to force a vote to cancel the exhibition. It backfired spectacularly. The other board members are now asking questions about his history of managing female employees. Reza appeared in the doorway, camera in hand. Darling, Elizabeth Montgomery's granddaughter is here. Wait until you hear what she brought with her. In the gallery's main space, an elderly woman stood examining the Phoenix red walls. Patricia Montgomery carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from generations of fighting back. In her hands was a leather portfolio. My grandmother, she said without preamble, kept everything, every threat, every attempt to steal her business, every letter from men who thought they could bully a woman into giving up her dream. She opened the portfolio. When I saw the news about your exhibition, about what happened to you, about this space, I knew these belonged here. The portfolio contained photographs, letters, legal documents, a century-old archive of one woman's refusal to be silenced. They tried to commit her, Patricia continued, said she was unstable for fighting back. Sound familiar? My phone buzzed with a message from James. The firm is imploding. Please, we need to talk. Then Sarah. They're canceling my foundation's exhibition. All my gallery contacts are ghosting me. This has to stop. Finally, William Cooper himself. Name your price. I showed the messages to Patricia, who laughed, a sharp, knowing sound. My grandmother got those same kinds of messages. Men offering money to make her go away quietly. You know what she did? What? She bought more property, built more factories, hired more women. Success, she smiled, is the best revenge. Reza was filming everything, his artist's eye seeing the connections across time. The installation needs one more element, he said. A historical context. A reminder that what they did to you, what they did to Maya, what they've done to countless women, it's part of a pattern. But so is the resistance. My phone lit up with another text from Emma. Just heard from that art critic who's covering the exhibition. She says the story's being picked up by major news outlets. This isn't just an art piece anymore, Mads. It's a movement. Looking around my nearly completed gallery, at Patricia's century-old evidence of resistance, at the screens being mounted to tell our collective story, I felt something shift. They had tried to make me small, to keep me quiet, to write my story for me. Instead, they had given me an army, a voice, and a stage, and in 2 days, everyone would see exactly what that meant. 24 hours before the exhibition opening, Morton Gallery hummed with nervous energy. Reza's team worked methodically, transforming the space into a cathedral of consequences. Each screen, each projection, each piece of evidence had its perfect place in the narrative. I stood in the center, watching my story, our story, come together in high-definition clarity. The New York Times just confirmed, Emma announced, rushing in with her tablet. They're sending their chief art critic. Apparently, the combination of Reza's installation and the William Cooper scandal has them intrigued. They're calling it a perfect storm of art and accountability. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an urgent text from Angela. Emergency meeting at my office. Now. William Cooper's trying one last play. The drive to Angela's downtown office gave me time to process the morning's flood of developments. Rebecca had sent over another batch of emails, evidence of William's systematic suppression of women at the firm stretching back decades. Maya Rodriguez had given 3 more interviews, each one adding layers to our collective narrative. Even, the factory renovation team had uncovered more historical documents, each one eerily parallel to our modern struggle. Angela's corner office offered a clear view of Harrison and Cooper's building. Through the windows, I could see unusual activity, people rushing in and out, cars pulling up, a definite sense of chaos. The firm's imploding, Angela announced as I entered. She wasn't alone. Catherine, Olivia, and Diana sat around her. Conference table, along with 2 women I didn't recognize. Madison, meet Janet Pierce and Laura Chen, former partners at Harrison and Cooper, until William Cooper decided they were too aggressive for leadership roles. We've been watching your story unfold, Janet said, her gray hair and sharp suit radiating authority. When we saw the New Yorker piece, when we realized what you were building with this exhibition. We knew it was time, Laura finished. Time to add our voices to the chorus. Angela spread documents across the table. They're filing a class action lawsuit against the firm. 27 women so far, all with similar stories of suppression, sabotage, and systematic discrimination. Your exhibition, Madison, it's broken the dam. My phone lit up with a text from James. Dad's calling in every favor he has. Please, this goes beyond us now. Then from Sarah. The foundation board is meeting to discuss my position. My entire career is falling apart. We never meant for any of this. That's their last play, Angela pointed to my phone. Appeals to pity, claims of unintended consequences, as if they didn't deliberately orchestrate every move, every betrayal. Speaking of moves, Catherine pulled out her tablet. Morton's board just called another emergency session. William Cooper is threatening to expose some alleged financial irregularities if they don't cancel the exhibition. Let me guess, I said. Irregularities that could be traced back to his own manipulation? Exactly. He's desperate enough to burn himself to stop this. My phone buzzed again. Reza. Installation nearly complete. But darling, you need to see this. Patricia Montgomery brought more evidence. Something about William Cooper's father and her grandmother's factory. Go! Angela waved me out. We'll handle the legal maneuvering. You focus on tomorrow night. That exhibition is bigger than just your story now. Back at Morton, Patricia Montgomery stood surrounded by yellowed documents and old photographs. Her hands trembled slightly as she held up a particular image. A young William Cooper Sr. standing outside the textile factory, looking remarkably like his son. He tried to buy my grandmother out, Patricia explained. When she refused, he started spreading rumors about her mental state, her business practices, her personal life. Sound familiar? Reza was already incorporating the new material into the installation, seeing the historical echoes, the repeated patterns of power and resistance. But she didn't break, Patricia continued. She built instead. Every attack made her stronger, more determined. By the time she died, she owned half the textile factories in Atlanta. My phone lit up with a call from Claire. Sarah just tried to get into the gallery. Security stopped her. She was crying, saying something about needing to explain, to make you understand. Understanding isn't the point anymore, I said, watching Reza's team adjust a projection, showing James and Sarah's wedding alongside historical images of women fighting back against men who tried to silence them. This is about transformation. The day blurred into a series of final preparations. Every hour brought new revelations, new supporters, new attempts by William Cooper and his allies to stop what was coming. But with each threat, each plea, each desperate move, our narrative grew stronger. Emma arrived with dinner, containers from the same restaurant where James and I had celebrated our last anniversary. The irony felt appropriate, she said, handing me a glass of wine. Also, you need to see social media. Rising Phoenix is trending. Women are sharing their own stories of being silenced, suppressed, written out of their own narratives. My phone buzzed one final time that night, a message from William Cooper himself. Whatever your price is, name it. This isn't just about the exhibition anymore. You're destroying legacies. I showed the message to Reza, who was making final adjustments to the central installation piece. A massive projection that would play across 3 walls simultaneously. Legacies, he mused, adjusting a camera angle. They always talk about legacies when they're about to lose power. But what about the legacies of all the women they silenced? What about their stories? Looking around the transformed gallery space, at the screens showing generations of women fighting back, at the evidence of systematic suppression spanning decades, at the artistic transformation of pain into power, I felt a deep sense of certainty. Tomorrow night, I said, everyone's legacy gets revealed. Because while they had tried to write my ending, I had turned their story into art. And art, unlike lies, lives forever. The morning of the exhibition dawned with an unexpected revelation. I was in my new loft above the gallery space, reviewing Reza's final installation sequence, when Emma burst through the door, still in her running clothes, clutching her phone like it held state secrets. "You're never going to believe who just contacted me," she gasped, trying to catch her breath. "James's first wife." I set down my coffee. "James was married before me?" "Exactly. Catherine Marshall. She's been following the story since Reza's teaser went viral. Apparently, she's been waiting for someone to finally expose the Cooper family's patterns." Emma collapsed onto my sofa. "And Mads? She has evidence that makes everything else look like child's play." My phone buzzed. Angela. "Cooper family's former housekeeper just came forward. Says she witnessed William coaching James on how to manage women's careers. Records of conversations going back to his college days. This isn't just learned behavior. It was deliberately taught. Then from Diana. Just got word from my real estate contacts. Sarah's been secretly viewing gallery spaces in other cities. She's planning an escape route. The pieces were still falling into place, even hours before the exhibition. I looked out my windows at the Atlanta skyline, remembering all the times James had told me to play it safe, to stay small, to be content with what I had, all while he and his father systematically constructed their web of control. Catherine's on her way to meet us, Emma continued. She's bringing documents, financial records, emails, therapy session notes from their marriage counseling, turns. Out the Coopers had a whole playbook for discrediting women who threatened their power. Reza appeared in the doorway, camera already rolling. Darling, the installation needs one final element, a prelude, showing how deep this pattern really goes, how many women they've silenced before you. My phone lit up with a text from Claire. Sarah's having a breakdown. She just confessed to Mom that she and James had been planning this for over a year. They had a whole timeline mapped out, when to announce their relationship, when to push you out of Morton, when to take over your professional connections. The exhibition opens in 8 hours, I said, watching Reza's team make final adjustments below. Can we incorporate all this new material in time? For this, Reza smiled his artist smile. We could rebuild the whole installation in 8 hours if we needed to. Art, like revenge, is best served fresh. Catherine Marshall arrived an hour later. She wasn't what I expected. Not a broken victim, but a successful tech CEO who'd rebuilt her life after the Coopers tried to destroy it. She carried a leather briefcase that looked heavy with history. I've been waiting years for someone to crack their facade, she said, spreading documents across my dining table. They didn't just try to silence us. They tried to erase us completely, make us doubt our own stories, our own worth. Dita. Evidence was damning. Emails between William and James discussing their management techniques for dealing with ambitious women. Financial records showing systematic undermining of female-led projects. A detailed strategy for professional sabotage disguised as protection. My phone buzzed with a message from Maya. Just met with the State Bar Association. They're opening a formal investigation into William Cooper's practices. This goes way beyond professional misconduct. Then from Catherine. Morton's board called another emergency meeting. But this time, they're voting to remove William Cooper completely. His own tactics are being used against him. Madison. Olivia's voice cut through the chaos as she entered the loft. The Times reporter is here early. She wants background before tonight, and... She smiled. She's bringing a photographer from their art section. This isn't just going to be an exhibition review. It's going to be a full exposé. Catherine looked up from her documents. You know what the worst part was? How they made us think we were crazy for seeing through them. How they turned our resistance into emotional instability. Not anymore, I said, watching Reza's team incorporate her evidence into the installation. Tonight, everyone sees the truth, in high definition, on every wall. My phone lit up with another text from James. Catherine Marshall? Really? You're going to trust the word of my unstable ex-wife? Then Sarah. Please, we can still stop this. Find another way to tell your story that doesn't destroy everything. Finally, William Cooper. You have no idea what you're doing. Some stories aren't meant to be told. I showed the messages to Catherine, who laughed, a sound of pure vindication. They always say that, don't they? That we don't understand, that we're being unreasonable, that there are better ways to handle things. As if their way, the quiet, controlled, contained way, hadn't been silencing women for generations. Reza appeared again, practically vibrating with creative energy. The installation is ready, with Catherine's evidence as the prelude, Maya's story as the build-up, and your wedding confrontation as the climax. It's more than an art piece now. It's a revolution in 3 acts. Emma, who'd been monitoring social media, looked up from her phone. The hashtag has evolved. It's not just Rising Phoenix anymore. Women are sharing their own Cooper family stories. Law firms across the country are starting internal reviews. This is becoming a movement. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Patricia Montgomery. My grandmother would be proud. The factory where women once fought for their right to work is about to become the stage where women fight for their right to be heard. Looking around my new home, at the evidence of generations of resistance spread across my table, at the screens below showing the pattern of power and suppression we were about to expose, I felt a profound sense of rightness. They had tried to write our stories for us, to cast us as minor characters in their grand narrative of power and control. But tonight, every wall of the Morton Gallery would tell a different story. Our story, in our voices, on our terms. And unlike their carefully constructed lies, this story would be impossible to ignore. 3 hours before the exhibition opening, Morton Gallery thrummed with electric anticipation. Every screen had been tested, every projection mapped perfectly. Onto the walls, every piece of evidence woven into Reza's narrative tapestry. The gallery's security team had already turned away 6 different attempts by James or Sarah to enter the building. The guest list has doubled, Emma announced, reviewing the latest RSVPs on her tablet. Every major gallery owner in Atlanta has confirmed. 3 national newspapers are sending critics, and she paused for effect. The State Bar Association president just requested an invitation. I stood in the center of the main gallery space, watching the final rehearsal of the installation sequence. On one wall, Catherine Marshall's evidence played in stark black and white. Years of systematic manipulation documented in emails and financial records. Another wall showed Maya's story, then Rebecca's revelations, then the historical photographs from the factory. The central wall remained dark, waiting for the main event, the wedding footage that had started it all. Madison. Olivia's voice cut through my thoughts. There's something you need to see outside. A crowd had gathered on the street, women holding signs, sharing stories, some even crying as they hugged complete strangers. The hashtag #ChaRisingPhoenix had evolved into a full-blown protest movement. Law firm employees, gallery assistants, former clients of Harrison and Cooper, all united by their own stories of being silenced. My phone buzzed with urgent messages. From Claire. Sarah just tried to call Mom hysterical. The foundation board voted to remove her. She's lost everything she built on your stolen dreams. From Catherine. William Cooper just resigned from Morton's board. They were about to vote him out anyway. His resignation letter is interesting. Lots of references to misunderstandings and different interpretations. From Angela. The State Bar investigation is expanding. 3 more firms have been implicated. Your exhibition is becoming a catalyst for industry-wide exposure. Reza appeared at my side, camera capturing the growing crowd outside. This is no longer just an art installation, he said softly. This is history being written in real time. Diana burst through the gallery doors, her usual composed demeanor crackling with excitement. You won't believe what just happened at Harrison and Cooper. The junior associates staged a walkout. They're all coming here tonight, bringing more evidence. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a call from James. For the first time since this began, I answered. The firm is falling apart. His voice cracked. Dad's reputation is destroyed. Sarah's career is over. Please, tell me what you want to make this stop. I put the phone on speaker, letting Reza capture the moment. What I want every woman you and your father silenced to have their voice back. I want every dream you stole, every career you sabotaged, every life you tried to control to be seen in perfect clarity. In about 3 hours, that's exactly what's going to happen. You don't understand what you're doing. No, James. You didn't understand what you were doing. Every time you told me to play it safe, every time you and Sarah planned behind my back, every time you followed your father's playbook for keeping women small, you thought you were writing our stories. Tonight, we take them back." I ended the call to find Catherine Marshall had arrived, carrying even more evidence. "Found these in my old therapy journals," she said, spreading photos across the reception desk. Pictures of the other women at Harrison and Cooper back then. All of us who were pushed out, silenced, erased. We should name them tonight. Every single one. Reza was already mobilizing his team to incorporate the new material. The installation grew more powerful with each edition, each layer of truth revealed. My phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah's sister Claire. "She's on her way to the gallery. Says she needs to tell her side before you tell yours." "Perfect timing," Reza smiled, adjusting his cameras. "Let her come. Let them all come. Art is most powerful when the subjects must face their own reflection." Security alerts started. Flooding in. James's father trying to enter through the back entrance, Sarah approaching the front, junior associates from Harrison and Cooper arriving early with boxes of documents. The crowd outside had grown larger, their stories echoing off the gallery walls like a Greek chorus of truth. Emma appeared with a garment bag. Olivia insisted, for tonight's opening. Inside was a dress in Phoenix red, perfectly tailored, undeniably powerful. My phone lit up one final time, a message from Patricia Montgomery. "Just found something in my grandmother's diary. The day she won, the day she finally took full control of her factory. She wore red. Said it was the color of resurrection." Looking around the gallery, at the screens showing decades of resistance, at the crowd outside sharing their stories, at the evidence of systematic suppression about to be transformed into art, I felt the weight of every woman who had been told to stay quiet, stay small, stay in her place. 2 hours until doors open, Diana announced, reviewing the security plans. "James and Sarah have both been spotted in the parking lot. William Cooper's car just pulled up." "Good," I said, taking the red dress from Emma. "Let them come. Let them all come. Some stories need an audience." Because tonight wasn't just about art, or revenge, or even justice. It was about transformation. The moment when victims become victors, when silence becomes symphony, when private pain becomes public power. And in 2 hours, everyone would witness that transformation in high-definition clarity, projected on every wall of the gallery they thought they could control. 1 hour before the exhibition opening, I stood in my private gallery office, adjusting the Phoenix red dress in the mirror. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the line of guests stretching around the block. Critics, journalists, lawyers, and women. So many women, each carrying their own story of silence broken. "They're all here," Emma entered without knocking, her face flushed with excitement. "James and Sarah are in the parking lot having what looks like a massive fight. William Cooper just arrived with his lawyers, and you're not going to believe who else showed up." "Who?" "James's mother, Barbara Cooper. She's asking to speak with you before the opening." My hands froze on the dress's zipper. Barbara Cooper had been notably absent from this entire saga, the quiet, perfect wife of William Cooper, who had hosted countless dinner parties where deals were made and careers were broken. Send her up. Barbara entered like a ghost from my old life, impeccably dressed but with something different in her eyes. She carried a small leather-bound book. "My diary," she said without preamble. 30 years of watching, documenting, staying silent. Until now. She placed it on my desk. "William doesn't know I kept it. All these years, all those women. I wrote down everything." "Why now?" I asked, watching her reflection in the EI window as the crowd below grew larger. "Because you did what I never could. You fought back, and watching you, it woke something up in all of us." My phone buzzed with urgent updates. From Angela. State Bar Association just announced a formal SAR. Investigation into William Cooper's entire career history. From Diana. Sarah's trying to negotiate her way in through security. Says she has evidence about James you need to see. From Catherine. Morton's board just voted unanimously to make the exhibition permanent. They're calling it a necessary reckoning. Barbara watched me read the messages, a small smile playing at her lips. You know what William's greatest fear was? Not losing his power, losing his story. The narrative he carefully constructed about who he was, what our family represented. And now that story belongs to everyone he tried to silence. Reza burst in, camera already rolling. Darling, you need to see this. The crowd. It's not just here. Women are gathering at Harrison and Cooper, at the courthouse, at every major law firm in the city. They're live streaming, sharing stories, demanding investigations. I followed him to the window. The street below had become a sea of people, many wearing red in solidarity. Signs rose above the crowd. Break the silence. Our stories matter. Rising Phoenix. Madison. Olivia appeared in the doorway. It's time. But there's one more thing you should know. The New York Times isn't just covering the exhibition. They're running a front-page investigation into systematic suppression in the legal industry. Your story, all of our stories, are about to go national. Barbara touched my arm gently. William used to say that power is about controlling. The narrative. He never understood that some narratives refuse to be controlled. My phone lit up with a final series of desperate messages. From James. Please, one conversation before this starts. I'll tell you everything. From Sarah. You don't understand what really happened. Let me explain. From William Cooper. Whatever Barbara told you, there are other perspectives to consider. I showed the messages to Reza, who smiled his artist's smile. Perfect. Let them all try to explain. Let them witness their own unraveling in high definition. Security alerts started flooding in. The crowd had grown beyond capacity. James and Sarah were making scene at the entrance. William Cooper was demanding access through his remaining connections on Morton's board. Let them in, I said, surprising. Everyone. All of them. They should see this up close. 5 minutes to opening, Emma announced, handing me a glass of champagne. The Times critic is in position. National news crews are set up. Social media is exploding. Barbara squeezed my hand once before heading downstairs. Make it count, she whispered. Make it count for all of us. Looking out over the crowd, at the screens prepared to tell our collective story, at the evidence about to be transformed into art, I felt the weight of every woman who had ever been told to stay quiet, to accept less, to let men write their story. Ready? Reza asked, adjusting his final camera angles. The phoenix red dress caught the gallery lights, throwing flames across the walls soon to be filled with truth. Below, I could see James and Sarah finally being allowed in. William Cooper, arriving with his legal team, and hundreds of women waiting to reclaim their narratives. Madison, Emma called softly, it's time. Because while they had tried to write our endings, we had turned their stories into art. And in exactly 1 minute, that art would tell the truth they had tried so hard to hide. The exhibition was about to begin, and with it, a revolution projected. In perfect clarity on every wall of the gallery they thought they could control. Yes, I said, starting toward the stairs. It's time. The gallery doors opened precisely at 8, and the crowd surged in like a tide of justice. I watched from the upper balcony as they filled the space, their gasps and murmurs building into a symphony of recognition. The installation began exactly as planned. Darkness falling first, then Catherine Marshall's evidence appearing on the left wall, each document illuminated like ancient scrolls revealing forgotten truths. My God, I heard someone whisper as William Cooper's early emails to James appeared, showing how methodically he'd taught his son to manage ambitious women. The crowd parted as William himself entered, his usual commanding presence diminished, under the weight of his own words projected 20 feet high. The right wall came alive with Maya's story, followed by a cascade of testimonies from other women, each face, each voice, each broken career illuminated in perfect clarity. Rebecca's evidence played across another surface, showing years of systematic suppression documented in meeting notes, performance reviews, and carefully worded warnings. Madison. Sarah's voice carried through the crowd. She stood in her designer dress, mascara already smearing as she watched her own face appear on screen. The moment in church when she saw me in the pew, the instant her perfect plan cracked. Please, let me explain. But the installation spoke for her. Security footage from Morton Gallery showed her secret meetings with James, their careful orchestration of my professional downfall. Emails revealed her attempts to steal my opportunities while playing the supportive friend. The evidence of their betrayal played in perfect synchronization with the historical photos from the factory, women fighting similar battles a century ago. Enough. James pushed through the crowd, reaching for my arm. This has to stop. Security, I said quietly, and 2 guards materialized to flank him. Watch. Everyone needs to watch. The central wall blazed to life with their wedding footage. The moment they walked past my pew, their faces frozen in shock, intercut with James's working late texts still lighting up my phone. But now the footage was surrounded by Barbara Cooper's diary entries, decades of witnessed suppression providing context for this latest betrayal. Critics scribbled frantically in their notebooks. Journalists' cameras flashed. The Times reporter stood transfixed as the installation revealed layer after layer of systematic destruction, not just of my marriage, but of countless women's dreams. This isn't art, William Cooper's voice shook with rage. This is character assassination. No, Reza stepped forward, his camera capturing William's reaction. This is truth transformed. Watch how your own words illuminate the patterns. The screens shifted to show the latest evidence. The junior associate's testimonies, Barbara's diary entries, Catherine Marshall's therapy journals. Each piece connected to create a devastating portrait of generational manipulation. Sarah crumpled into a chair as her own machinations played across the walls. Her attempts to buy my gallery space, her sabotage of other women's careers, her calculated performance as the supportive best friend while systematically destroying my dreams. You don't understand, she whispered. I had to. They said it was the only way to succeed in their world. Their world, I finally spoke, my voice carrying through the shocked silence. But not ours. Not anymore. The installation shifted. Again, showing the factory's transformation, from a place where women once fought for the right to work to this moment of artistic revolution. Patricia Montgomery stood beneath the images of her grandmother, tears streaming down her face as decades of resistance came full circle. The Bar Association will hear about this, William threatened, but his voice lacked conviction as he watched his carefully constructed empire unravel in high definition. They already have. Angela stepped forward, tablet in hand. The investigation starts tomorrow. Every email, every meeting, every managed career will be examined. Your reign of suppression is over, Mr. Cooper. The crowd had grown so silent you could hear the soft whir of the projectors. On every surface, evidence of systematic destruction played alongside stories of resistance and survival. Maya Rodriguez stood beneath her own testimony, head held. Ida Catherine Marshall watched her past pain transformed into powerful truth. Barbara Cooper's diary entries revealed the quiet witness who had finally found her voice. James made one last attempt to reach me. Maddie, please. I loved you. In my way. Your way. I turned to face him, the phoenix red dress catching the light from his own incriminating emails projected behind me. Your way was about control. about keeping women small, about following your father's playbook for power. But look around, James. Look what happens when we refuse to stay small. The Times critic was already typing on his phone, his face illuminated by the cascade of evidence surrounding us. The crowd had begun to move through the space like pilgrims in a cathedral of consequence, each screen revealing another layer of truth. Sarah tried one final time. We can still fix this. Find a way to tell the story differently. The story tells itself now. I gestured to the walls where their betrayal played on endless loop, surrounded by the testimony of every woman they'd tried to silence. Art has a funny way of revealing truth, doesn't it? As if on cue, the installation reached its climax, every screen synchronizing to show the moment in church when their perfect plan began to unravel. But now their faces, their shock, their guilt played alongside evidence of every other life they'd tried to control, every dream they'd tried to crush, every woman they'd tried to silence. The crowd's reaction was physical, a collective intake of breath as the full scope of their systematic destruction became clear. William Cooper stumbled slightly, watching his legacy transform from power to predation in perfect high-definition clarity. Because while they had tried to write our stories, we had turned their destruction into art. And art, unlike lies, lives forever in the light of truth. The first hour after the exhibition opening felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. The Times critic had already filed his initial review. A searing indictment of institutional power transformed into transcendent art. Social media exploded with images and videos from the installation, each revelation spawning new hashtags, new stories, new voices joining the chorus of truth. Madison. The voice that cut through the chaos belonged to Elizabeth Chen, chair of the State Bar Association's Ethics Committee. She stood beneath the screen showing William Cooper's earliest emails to James, her expression grave. We'll need copies of everything, every email, every document, every piece of evidence. This goes beyond professional misconduct. This is systematic abuse of power spanning decades. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with urgent messages. From Angela. 3 more law firms just announced internal investigations. Partners are stepping down across the city. Your exhibition broke the dam. From Catherine. Morton's board just voted to rename the gallery. They're calling it the Phoenix Gallery for Truth in Art. The irony is delicious. From Diana. You need to see this. Women are gathering outside law firms across the country. Your story has sparked a national conversation about institutional suppression. Sarah sat alone in a corner, watching her own face play across the walls. Every calculated move, every betrayal, every moment of choosing power over friendship illuminated in perfect clarity. Her designer dress seemed to shrink around her as each new revelation stripped away her carefully constructed facade. I never meant... She started when I approached, but her voice failed as the screens showed her secret meeting with the High Museum Board, her attempts to sabotage my career while playing the supportive friend. Didn't you? I asked softly. Every lunch where you encouraged me to play it safe. Every opportunity you helped kill. Every dream you tried to steal while pretending to support me. It's all there, Sarah. In your own words, your own actions. James stood with his father near the entrance, both men watching their empire crumble in high definition. William Cooper's face had gone ashen as Barbara's diary entries revealed decades of witnessed manipulation. The perfect power family, exposed frame by devastating frame. The junior associates are going public. Emma appeared at my side, tablet displaying a cascade of breaking news alerts. Every woman who ever worked at Harrison and Cooper is coming forward. They're calling it the Phoenix Effect. Women across the legal industry speaking out, sharing stories, demanding investigations. Reza moved through the crowd like a conductor, his cameras capturing every reaction, every moment of recognition, every instance of truth hitting home. The installation had evolved beyond art. It had become a catalyst, a mirror forcing the powerful to face their own reflection. Madison. Maya Rodriguez's voice carried across the gallery. She stood beneath her own testimony, surrounded by other women from Harrison and Cooper. The State Bar Association wants statements from all of us. Official testimony. This isn't just about art anymore. This is about justice. My phone buzzed again. A message from Claire. Mom just kicked Sarah out of the house. Said she can't bear to look at her own daughter after seeing the evidence. The family is. It's completely shattered. Then from Rebecca. The firm's HR director just resigned. Says she can't be part of the cover-up anymore. She's bringing more files. The Times photographer captured the moment William Cooper finally broke, watching his own words, his own systematic destruction of women's careers, played in endless loop on the gallery walls. His carefully constructed world of power and control transformed into an inescapable testament to truth. You've destroyed everything, he managed, his voice barely a whisper. No, I corrected him, standing beneath the historical photos of the factory women who had fought similar battles. You destroyed. We revealed. Art just made it impossible to ignore. Barbara Cooper approached her husband, her diary projected, behind her like a guardian angel of truth. All those years, she said softly. All those women. I wrote it all down, William. Every dinner party where careers were ended. Every mentoring session that destroyed another woman's dreams. Every time you taught our son to follow in your footsteps. James tried one final time to reach me, his face illuminated by the evidence of his own betrayal. We could have been happy, he said, if you had just stayed in your place. My place? I gestured to the transformed gallery space, to the crowds of women sharing stories beneath the screens showing decades of suppression. Look around, James. This is my place. This is all of our place. Art has a way of creating space for truth to breathe. The installation reached another crescendo, their wedding footage now surrounded by evidence of every career they'd destroyed, every woman they'd silenced, every life they'd tried to control. The impact was physical. Sarah sobbed openly. James stumbled back. William Cooper watched his legacy transform from power to persecution in perfect clarity. The New Yorker just confirmed, Emma announced, her voice carrying through the gallery. They're running a full investigation series, The Phoenix Rising, How Art Exposed Decades of Systematic Suppression. Your story is going national, Mads. It's sparking investigations at law firms across the country. Catherine Marshall stood with Maya Rodriguez and the other women from Harrison and Cooper, their faces illuminated by their own testimonies projected on the walls. We should thank them, really, she said, her voice carrying. They thought they were silencing us. Instead, they gave us the greatest gift, the power of our collective voice. As the night deepened, the crowd showed no signs of thinning. Every screen, every piece of evidence, every revealed truth drew. More gasps, more tears, more women stepping forward to share their own stories of survival and resistance. Because while they had tried to write our endings, we had transformed their destruction into art. And art, unlike power, belongs to everyone who dares to look truth in the face and call it by its name. The morning after the exhibition opening, I sat in my gallery office watching the sunrise paint Atlanta's skyline in shades of rebirth. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the installation went live. News outlets, law firms, women's organizations, all wanting to understand how art had managed to crack open decades of systematic suppression. You need to see this, Emma burst in, laptop open to the New York Times homepage. The headline blazed across the screen, The Art of Exposure, How One Exhibition Sparked a National Reckoning. Below it, photos of the installation played in a devastating slideshow. James and Sarah's wedding, William Cooper's emails, the historical factory photos, all woven together into an undeniable tapestry of truth. That's not all, she continued, pulling up more tabs. Law firms across the country are launching internal investigations. 3 major firms in New York just announced mandatory reviews of their promotion practices. They're calling it the Phoenix Protocol, new guidelines for preventing systematic suppression of women's careers. My phone lit up with messages from Angela. State Bar Association just suspended William Cooper pending investigation. The evidence from your exhibition is being entered into official record. Art just became legal precedent. From Catherine. Morton's board voted unanimously to establish a fund for women artists and professionals who face discrimination. They're naming it after the factory women from your installation. From Diana. You might want to turn on CNN. They're running a special report on institutional suppression in the legal industry. Your exhibition footage is the centerpiece. Reza appeared in the doorway, still filming, his artist's eye capturing the aftermath of our creative destruction. Darling, the installation has taken on a life of its own. Museums are calling, wanting to host touring versions. Women are organizing screenings in law schools, corporate boardrooms, anywhere power needs to face its reflection. The gallery below had become a pilgrimage site. Even this early, women gathered beneath the screens, sharing stories, finding solidarity in the exposed truth. Sarah's careful sabotage of my career played alongside similar stories from across the country, a pattern finally brought into the light. Madison. Claire's voice was quiet as she entered. You should know, Sarah checked herself into a treatment center last night. The weight of seeing everything exposed. She broke. Really broke. Mom's with her. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from James. The firm is dissolving. Dad's partners are jumping ship. Everything he built, everything he taught me to believe. It's all falling apart. Then, from William Cooper himself. You've won. Are you satisfied now that you've destroyed a legacy? I showed the messages to Reza, who smiled his artist's smile. They still don't understand, do they? This was never about destruction. This was about transformation. The evidence proved his point. On every screen, decades of suppression played alongside stories of survival and resistance. Barbara Cooper's diary entries revealed not just the manipulation, but the quiet strength of women who had watched, waited, and finally found their voice. The Phoenix Gallery's first official exhibition opens next week, Diana announced, striding in with construction updates. 6 women artists who were previously rejected by traditional galleries. The waiting list for future shows is already months long. My phone lit up with another call. The Today Show wanting an interview about how art had managed to expose what legal investigations couldn't. Below, I could hear tour groups moving through the installation, law students taking notes, journalists recording every detail of institutional power transformed into undeniable truth. Madison. Maya Rodriguez entered with Catherine Marshall and a group of women I didn't recognize. Meet the newest plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit against Harrison and Cooper. They saw the installation online, flew in from across the country. Every screen, every piece of evidence spoke to their experience. The women shared their stories. Different firms, different cities, same pattern of systematic suppression. The installation had given them more than evidence. It had given them permission to speak their truth. The State Bar Association just announced a national task force, Angela called from the doorway. They're using footage from your exhibition in their training materials. Art is literally changing how the legal industry handles power. Sarah's foundation board had already reached out, wanting to redirect their resources to supporting women in the arts. The High Museum, recognizing the historical significance, requested permission to archive the installation. Law schools across the country were incorporating the footage into their ethics courses. Look at this. Emma held up her phone, showing social media footage of women gathering outside law firms in different cities. Each group carried signs with quotes from the installation, their own stories of survival transformed into demands for change. My phone buzzed again, a message from Barbara Cooper. Williams resigned from all his boards. James is talking about leaving law entirely. The power structure you exposed. It's not just cracking. It's being dismantled from within. Reza moved through the gallery, his camera capturing the evolution of his art from exposure to revolution. You know what the most powerful part is? He mused. Not the evidence, not the testimonies, but the transformation. How truth, when properly illuminated, becomes impossible to deny. Outside my office window, the sun had fully risen over Atlanta. The city looked different somehow, as if the light of exposure had changed not just the legal industry, but the very landscape of power itself. They tried to write our stories, Maya said softly, watching her own testimony play across the gallery walls. Instead, they gave us the material to write history. Because while they had thought art was just about beauty, we had proven it was about truth. And truth, when transformed into art, becomes both mirror and window, reflecting what was, revealing what could be. The phoenix had risen, and its flames were spreading far beyond one gallery's walls. 1 week after the exhibition opening, I stood in my transformed gallery space, watching the installation play to yet another packed house. The Phoenix Gallery had become more than a venue. It was a movement headquarters, a testimony center, a place where truth and art collided to create change. The numbers are staggering, Emma said, reviewing the latest data on her tablet. 17 law firms have launched internal investigations. 32 women have filed complaints with state bar associations across the country. The American Bar Association is creating new guidelines for gender equity, using evidence from your installation as case studies. My phone buzzed with the morning's updates from Claire. Sarah's doctors think she'll be in treatment for at least a month. The therapist says seeing everything exposed at once, all the manipulation, all the calculated destruction, it shattered her carefully constructed reality. Mom says she's finally talking about how William Cooper groomed her to be part of their system. From Catherine Marshall. Just finished my testimony to the State Bar Association. They're calling what happened at Harrison and Cooper institutional predation. Your art gave us the language to name what happened to us. From Angela. The class action lawsuit now has over 50 plaintiffs. Every woman who sees the installation recognizes her own story in the pattern. Art accomplished what years of legal battles couldn't. Reza moved through the space, still filming, capturing the evolution of his installation from exhibition to evidence. We're getting requests from museums worldwide, he announced. They want to create permanent installations about institutional power and artistic resistance. Your story has become a template for exposing systematic suppression. The gallery hummed with activity, law students studying the evidence walls, journalists interviewing former Harrison and Cooper employees, women sharing stories beneath screens showing decades of calculated destruction. Sarah's careful dismantling of my career played alongside similar patterns from firms across the country, each revelation adding to the growing demand for change. Madison. Barbara Cooper's voice was quiet as she entered. She looked different. Now, stronger, more present. William signed the divorce papers this morning. After seeing everything exposed in your installation, after reading my diary entries projected on those walls, he finally understood what he'd done. Not just to you, but to generations of women. My phone lit up with a message from James. The firm is officially dissolved. Dad's reputation is destroyed. Everything he built, everything he taught me to believe about power and success. Your art revealed it for what it was. I don't know who I am without those lies. Diana appeared with the latest news coverage. The Phoenix effect is spreading beyond law firms, corporate boards, academic, institutions, art galleries. They're all examining their power structures. Your installation created a blueprint for exposing institutional suppression. The evidence continued its relentless revelation on every screen. William Cooper's emails teaching James how to manage ambitious women played alongside Barbara Zai, diary entries documenting each careful destruction. Sarah's calculated performance as the supportive friend, while systematically undermining my career, showed in perfect parallel with similar patterns from across the industry. "We've confirmed 20 more galleries for the touring installation," Olivia announced, striding in with her tablet. "Law schools are incorporating the footage into their ethics curriculum. The Phoenix Protocol is becoming standard policy at firms nationwide." Maya Rodriguez entered with a group of young lawyers, their faces illuminated by the screens showing their own potential futures transformed. "These are first-year associates from firms across the city," she explained. "They're learning how to recognize the patterns, how to resist the systematic suppression before it takes root." My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia Montgomery. "The factory women would be proud. Their spirit of resistance lives on in every frame of your installation. Art doesn't just expose truth, it ensures truth survives." The Times photographer had captured the moment everything changed. William Cooper, watching his carefully constructed world of power exposed frame by frame, Sarah facing the evidence of her own calculated betrayal, James seeing his inherited patterns of control transformed into undeniable truth. "You know what's remarkable?" Emma mused, watching another group of women share stories beneath the screens. "They thought they were writing your ending. Instead, they gave you the material to write a new beginning for countless women." Reza's cameras captured it all. The tears, the recognition, the moment when personal pain transformed into collective power. "This is no longer just an installation," he said softly. "This is a revolution documented in real time." Outside my office window, Atlanta's skyline reflected the morning sun. The city looked different now, as if the light of exposure had changed not just the legal industry, but the very landscape of possibility. "They never understood," Maya said, watching her testimony play alongside similar stories of survival. "Art doesn't just reveal truth, it makes truth impossible to ignore. Because while they had tried to silence us with power, we had answered with creativity. While they had worked in shadows, we had transformed their darkness into light. While they had tried to write our stories, we had turned their weapons into art. And art, unlike power, belongs to everyone who dares to speak their truth." The phoenix had risen, and its flames were illuminating paths to freedom that no one could ignore. 1 month after the exhibition opening, I stood in my loft above the Phoenix Gallery, watching the sun rise over a changed Atlanta. The morning light caught the edges of newspaper headlines framed on my wall: "The Art of Justice," "How One Exhibition Changed the Legal Industry," "The Phoenix Effect," "A Revolution in Exposing Power." Each one a testament to how truth, when transformed into art, becomes impossible to contain. "You need to see this." Emma entered without knocking, her excitement palpable. "Sarah's written a public statement from the treatment center. It's not what anyone expected." I read the statement on her tablet, my hands steady despite the weight of the words. Sarah had detailed everything. How William Cooper had identified her as a potential ally during her first year at Morton. How he'd groomed her to be part of their system of control. How she'd been taught to see betrayal as a necessary step toward power. My phone lit up with the morning's cascade of updates. From Angela. "State Bar Association's investigation complete. William Cooper's license permanently revoked. The evidence from your installation was critical. They're calling it a landmark case in addressing institutional abuse of power." From Catherine. 3 more major firms have adopted the Phoenix Protocol. It's becoming the industry standard for preventing systematic suppression. Your art literally rewrote the rules. From Diana. The museum board approved the permanent Phoenix Wing. an entire gallery dedicated to art that exposes institutional power. You're curating the inaugural exhibition. Reza appeared in my doorway, still filming even now. Darling, wait until you hear this. The Guggenheim wants to create an entire series about art as a tool for institutional change. They're calling it the Phoenix Paradigm, when art transforms power. The gallery below had evolved into something beyond our initial vision. Every day, women gathered beneath the screens, showing their shared history of survival. Law students studied the evidence, walls like sacred texts of warning. Corporate boards sent representatives to understand how systematic suppression could be exposed through creative truth-telling. Madison. Barbara Cooper's voice was stronger now as she entered, carrying a thick folder. I found more diaries. Not just mine, William's mother's journals, his grandmother's letters. Generations of women documenting how power was passed down, how control was taught, how silence was enforced. The pattern goes back further than we imagined. My phone buzzed with a message from James, the first in weeks. The therapy's helping, understanding how Dad shaped me, how I perpetuated the pattern. It's painful, but necessary. Your art didn't just expose truth, it forced us to face ourselves. Claire arrived with more updates about Sarah. The doctors say naming it, seeing it all exposed in your installation, it broke something loose. She's finally talking about how seductive the power structure was, how William Cooper made destruction feel like progress. The installation played its endless loop of truth on every screen. But now, alongside the evidence of systematic suppression, news stories appeared. Women speaking out, institutions changing, power structures being dismantled and rebuilt with transparency at their foundation. The numbers keep growing, Emma reported, reviewing her latest data. Over 200 women have come forward with similar stories from firms across the country. The American Bar Association is creating a task force specifically focused on institutional patterns of suppression. They want you on the advisory board. Maya Rodriguez entered with a group of young lawyers, not just women now, but men too, all studying how power could corrupt and how art could expose. These are future partners, she explained. They're learning how to recognize the patterns before they become part of them. Your installation is becoming required viewing for new associates. My phone lit up with a message from Patricia Montgomery. Just found more photos from the factory days. Women supporting women, building their own power structures while men tried to tear them down. History repeats, but so does resistance. The Times photographer had captured the ongoing impact. William Cooper's empire crumbling, Sarah's carefully constructed facade breaking open to reveal truth, James facing his inherited patterns of control. But more importantly, they'd captured the transformation, women rising, institutions changing, power being redefined. You know what they never understood? Olivia mused, watching another group tour the installation. Power isn't about control, it's about creation. They tried to write your story, but you created something entirely new. Reza's cameras documented everything. The continuing revelations, the institutional changes, the moment when personal pain became collective transformation. This isn't just documentation anymore, he said softly. This is evolution captured in real time. Through my office window, Atlanta's skyline reflected the morning light differently now. The city itself seemed transformed, as if the exposure of truth had changed not just its institutions, but its very DNA. The Phoenix Gallery's next exhibition opens next week, Diana reminded me. Women artists exploring institutional power through their own experiences. The waiting list for submissions is overwhelming. My phone buzzed with another update, a message from the State Bar Association. The Phoenix Protocol is being adopted nationwide. Your installation didn't just expose the problem, it provided the blueprint for change. Because while they had tried to write our stories with power, We had rewritten the narrative with truth. While they had worked to maintain control, we had created freedom through exposure. While they had tried to keep us small, we had grown wings of artistic resistance. The phoenix hadn't just risen, it had taught others how to fly. 2 months after the exhibition opening, I received an unexpected request. Sarah wanted to meet at her treatment center's garden, a neutral ground for what promised to be a complicated conversation. The morning air was crisp as I walked through the manicured paths, remembering how she'd once helped me plan my wedding in a garden much like this one. "She's different now," Claire had warned me during our morning call. "The therapy. It stripped away all the layers, all the careful construction. You might not recognize her." She was right. The Sarah who sat waiting on a stone bench bore little resemblance to the polished woman who'd married my husband while he texted me he was working late. Her designer clothes had been replaced by simple linen, her calculated poise by raw authenticity. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, her hands twisting in her lap. "I've been watching the installation footage they allowed me to see here, watching myself become that person. That carefully constructed weapon in William Cooper's arsenal." My phone buzzed with the morning's updates, but for once, I let them wait. From Angela. 3 more firms have dissolved their old power structures, rebuilding with the Phoenix. Protocol as their foundation. Your art didn't just expose the problem, it provided the solution. From Catherine. Museum boards across the country are reviewing their acquisition policies. The way Sarah tried to steal your opportunities? It was a common practice. Not anymore. From Maya. State bar associations in 5 states have adopted new ethical guidelines based on the patterns your installation exposed. They're calling it the Phoenix Standard. I remember the moment William Cooper first noticed me, Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the weight of revelation. I was new at Morton, ambitious, lonely. He saw it all, my potential for manipulation, my willingness to trade authenticity for acceptance. He taught me how to destroy while smiling, how to betray while appearing supportive. Riza's camera captured her testimony from a respectful distance. Even now, every revelation was part of the ongoing documentation of truth transformed into art. The hardest part, she looked directly at me for the first time, is realizing I didn't just betray you. I betrayed myself. Every dream I stole from you was a dream I stopped believing I could achieve honestly. Every career I helped them destroy was another piece of my own soul traded for their approval. The garden around us buzzed with life. Butterflies dancing between flowers, birds calling from carefully tended trees, nature's reminder that growth often follows destruction. My phone lit up with a message from James. Finished another therapy session. Understanding how Dad's lessons shaped me, how I became a tool in his system of control. It's like waking up from a dark dream. Your art didn't just expose us, it freed us from patterns we didn't know we were trapped in. The installation, Sarah's voice cracked slightly. It didn't just show what we did, it showed why we did it. How systematic suppression works, not just through direct power, but through turning women against each other, making us compete for scraps of male approval instead of creating our own feast. Emma arrived with updates about the Phoenix Gallery's latest impact. Law schools are creating entire courses around the patterns your installation exposed. Art. As evidence, the Phoenix effect in institutional change. They want you to guest lecture. I don't expect forgiveness, Sarah said as Emma waited at a respectful distance. What I did, stealing your opportunities, manipulating your trust, marrying James while pretending to support you, it's beyond forgiveness. But watching your art transform our destruction into catalyst for change. It gave me hope that maybe I could transform too. The installation's footage played endlessly at the Phoenix Gallery, but now new stories were being added. Testimonies of change, documentation of institutions rebuilding. evidence of power structures being dismantled and reconstructed with transparency at their core. The Phoenix Protocol isn't just changing firms, Diana reported, joining us with her tablet of data. Universities, corporations, art institutions, they're all examining how power operates in their systems. Your personal story exposed a universal pattern. My phone buzzed with a message from Barbara Cooper. William signed over his remaining assets to the foundation. Says he wants his legacy to be repair, not destruction. The money will fund scholarships for women in law and art, turning tools of suppression into instruments of elevation. Sarah watched a butterfly land on the bench between us. You know what I realize now? They taught us that power was a finite resource, something to be hoarded, protected, stolen. But your art showed that real power multiplies when shared. Every woman who sees the installation, who recognizes her own story, who finds her voice, the power grows. The garden's piece was interrupted by Emma's excited arrival with breaking news. The American Bar Association just announced a complete overhaul of their ethics guidelines. They're incorporating footage from the installation into their required training. Your art is literally rewriting the rules of institutional power. I'm not asking for my old life back, Sarah said as wind stirred the garden's leaves. That life was built on lies. Lies William Cooper taught me, lies I chose to believe, lies I used to hurt others. What I'm asking for is the chance to be part of the change your art created. Through the garden's wrought iron gates, I could see Atlanta's skyline, the same view I'd had the morning I watched my husband marry my best friend. But now everything looked different, transformed not just by time, but by truth exposed through art. Because while they had tried to write our stories through suppression, we had rewritten the narrative through creative resistance. While they had worked to maintain control through destruction, we had created change through exposure. While they had tried to keep us small through betrayal, we had grown wings of collective transformation. 3 months after the exhibition opening, the Phoenix Gallery hosted a different kind of event. The space that had exposed systematic suppression now witnessed systematic change, as representatives from law firms across the country gathered to sign the Phoenix Accord, a binding commitment to dismantle old power structures and rebuild, with transparency at their core. Look at this, Emma whispered, showing me her tablet. The Times headline read, Phoenix Effect Transforms Legal Industry, How One Art Installation Sparked National Reform. Below it, photos showed firms implementing new policies, women stepping into leadership roles, institutions rebuilding from the ground up. My phone lit up with messages marking the moment. From Angela. State bar associations nationwide have adopted the Phoenix standards. Your art didn't just expose the problem, it created the solution. From Maya. First round of Phoenix scholarships awarded today. 20 women from disadvantaged backgrounds entering law school. William Cooper's money funding the very changes he fought against. From Catherine Marshall. Just finished speaking at Harvard Law's Symposium on Institutional Change. Your installation is now required viewing for ethics courses. Art becoming education, becoming evolution. The gallery hummed with energy as James approached the signing table. He looked different now, humbled, aware, transformed. The therapy helped me understand, he said quietly, picking up the pen. How Dad's lessons shaped me, how I became part of their system, how I confused control for love. Sarah watched from her place among the other signatories. Her treatment complete, she'd chosen to become part of the solution, working with law firms to identify and dismantle patterns of suppression she'd once helped maintain. The numbers are extraordinary, Diana reported, reviewing the latest data. Over 500 firms have adopted the Phoenix Protocol. 32 universities have incorporated the installation into their curriculum. 7 countries have requested touring versions for their legal institutions. Reza moved through. The space, still documenting. His camera is capturing not just signatures, but transformation. The screens above showed our story, but now alongside evidence of change, testimonies of reform, documentation of power structures being rebuilt with accountability at their foundation. Madison. William Cooper's voice was barely recognizable as he approached the signing table. Months of therapy had stripped away his commanding presence, leaving something more authentic in its place. The foundation board approved the final transfer. Everything I built through suppression will now fund liberation. Barbara Cooper stood beside him, her diary's revelations still playing on screens above. Sometimes, she said softly, destruction must be complete before rebuilding can begin. Your art destroyed what needed ending. Now we create what needs beginning. My phone buzzed with updates from across the country. From Catherine. Museum boards nationwide have adopted Phoenix transparency standards. The way they tried to control your career, it's becoming impossible to replicate. From Claire. Sarah's speaking at the National Conference on Institutional Reform. Her testimony about how power structures groom allies is changing how we understand systematic suppression. The installation played endlessly above us, but now each revelation of destruction was followed by evidence of transformation. The screens showed not just how power had corrupted, but how creativity had healed. You know what they never understood? Olivia mused, watching another firm's representatives sign the accord. Art doesn't just expose truth, it creates new possibilities for truth to exist. Patricia Montgomery arrived with more historical documents, not just of resistance now, but of reconstruction. The factory women, she said, spreading photos across a table. They didn't just fight power. They created new models of it. Like you're doing now. Emma interrupted with breaking news. The Phoenix Protocol is being adapted for corporate boards, academic institutions, even government agencies. Your personal story exposed universal patterns, and now it's creating universal change. Through the gallery windows, Atlanta's skyline reflected the afternoon sun. The city looked different now, transformed not just by exposed truth, but by truth's power to heal. I understand now, James said as he finished signing. Why you chose art to tell this story. Legal battles they could fight. Professional complaints they could bury. But art made truth undeniable. Sarah approached with her own pen, ready to sign her commitment to change. They taught us that power meant controlling the story, she said. Your art showed that real power means transforming the story into something healing. Because while they had tried to write our endings through control, we had created new beginnings through truth. While they had worked to maintain power through suppression, we had built strength through exposure. While they had tried to keep us silent through betrayal, we had found our voices through creative resistance. The phoenix hadn't just risen, it had taught others how to transform their own. Flames into light. 6 months to the day after I watched my husband marry my best friend in St. Michael's Church, I stood in the same sanctuary, but this time I wasn't sitting in the last pew watching my life unravel. I was standing at the podium, addressing a conference on institutional transformation, the church's Gothic architecture now housing hope instead of betrayal. The Phoenix effect wasn't just about exposing power, I began, looking out at the assembled faces. It was about transforming it, about turning private pain into public change, about using art to make truth not just visible, but undeniable. The installation played on screens throughout the church. No longer just our story, but hundreds of stories. Women from across the country sharing their experiences, institutions documenting their changes, power structures being dismantled, and rebuilt with transparency at their core. My phone buzzed with the morning's confirmations. From Angela. Final tally. Over 1,000 firms have adopted the Phoenix Protocol. Your art created a new standard for institutional accountability. From Catherine. Phoenix Galleries National. Tour starts next week. Every major city has requested the installation. Truth, it seems, has wings. From Maya. Just finished orientation for the new Phoenix Scholars. 50 women entering law school, funded by the very system that once tried to silence us. Sarah sat in the front row, transformed by months of therapy and truth-telling. She'd become an unexpected ally in institutional change. Her insider knowledge, helping other women recognize and resist grooming for suppression. James sat further back, still working through his own transformation, learning to exist without his father's patterns of control. What happened in this church 6 months ago, I continued, wasn't just about a wedding or a betrayal or even revenge. It was about seeing patterns that had been invisible because they were everywhere, about using art to make systemic suppression so visible it became impossible to maintain. Reza's cameras captured it all, still documenting, still transforming truth into art. The screens showed William Cooper signing over his fortune to the Phoenix Foundation, Barbara Cooper's diary becoming required reading in law school ethics courses, the factory women's history being preserved in the Smithsonian. The Phoenix Protocol isn't just policy. I gestured to where firm representatives sat with their signed accords. It's a commitment to creative transparency, to using art and truth to prevent power from calcifying into control. Emma managed the live stream as my words reached audiences worldwide. The hashtag #OurPhoenixEffect had evolved into a global movement, with women using art to expose and transform institutional power in their own cultures. They tried to write our stories. My voice carried through the same space where I'd once sat silent. They thought power meant controlling the narrative. But we showed that real power comes from transforming the narrative into something healing. Through the stained glass windows, Atlanta's skyline caught the morning light. The city looked different now, not just because institutions had changed, but because we had changed how power itself was seen and understood. Diana arrived with the latest impact reports. The Phoenix Gallery had spawned sister galleries across the country, each dedicated to art that exposed and transformed institutional power. Sarah's foundation, now restructured with accountability at its core, funded women artists exploring themes of systematic change. What began as one woman's response to betrayal, I concluded, became a blueprint for institutional transformation. Because art doesn't just reveal truth, it creates new possibilities for truth to exist. The screen showed the journey, from that moment in the church pew, through the exhibition's revelations, to the nationwide changes still unfolding. Each image a testament to how creative resistance could transform destruction into rebirth. After the conference, I walked the church grounds with Emma, remembering that Tuesday when everything changed. "You know what's remarkable?" she said softly. "They thought they were ending your story. Instead, they gave you the material to help countless women rewrite their own." My phone lit up one final time, a message from Patricia Montgomery. The factory women would be proud. "You didn't just rise from the ashes. You taught others how to transform their own flames into flight." Looking back at the church, at the city beyond, at all the institutions now rebuilding with transparency and truth at their foundation, I felt the weight of transformation. They had tried to write my ending with betrayal in this sacred space. Instead, they had given me the beginning of a revolution. Because while they thought power meant controlling the story, we had proven that real power comes from transforming the story into art. While they had worked through suppression and silence, we had created through exposure and truth. While they had tried to keep us small through betrayal, we had grown wings of creative resistance. The phoenix hadn't just risen, it had taught the world a new way to fly. And in that same church where my husband once married my best friend, while texting me he was working late, a new truth emerged. Sometimes the greatest acts of power aren't in maintaining control, but in creating transformation.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. I truly appreciate you spending this quiet moment with me. May you have a deep, peaceful sleep tonight. After this little story I shared with you, sweet dreams, and until next time, good night.